Have you ever wondered what it would be like to drive a car that could launch rockets, spray knockout gas, and disappear into the night like a shadow? Back in 1966, television audiences got their answer when the Green Hornet's Black Beauty rolled onto screens, becoming one of the most gadget-packed vehicles in TV history. This wasn't just any car, it was a rolling arsenal disguised as a luxury sedan. Today we're counting down 20 weird facts about this iconic crime-fighting machine that you probably never knew. From Bruce Lee's secret control panel to a flamethrower that was too dangerous for television, these behind-the-scenes secrets will change how you see this classic TV car forever. So buckle up and hit that subscribe button, because we're about to take a ride through some truly bizarre automotive history. Number 20. The TV show used two primary Black Beauties built by Dean Jeffries, each loaded with custom gadgets for filming. When the Green Hornet premiered in 1966, viewers assumed they were watching one incredible car tear through the streets of the city. They weren't. The production actually used two main Black Beauties, and here's where it gets interesting. Dean Jeffries, the legendary Hollywood car customizer who'd previously worked on the Monkey Mobile, built both vehicles from scratch in his North Hollywood shop. But these weren't identical twins. Each car served a specific purpose on set. The first Black Beauty was the hero car, the pristine version used for close-ups and dialogue scenes, where Van Williams and Bruce Lee needed to look good climbing in and out. This one had the most detailed interior work, with every button and switch looking functional even if most were just for show. The second car was the stunt vehicle, reinforced with a roll cage and stripped of unnecessary weight for action sequences. It took high-speed turns, crashed through barriers, and endured the punishment of weekly television production. The stunt car's gadgets were more robust too, built to withstand repeated use during multiple takes. Jeffries and his team spent 4 months building these cars, working around the clock to meet the show's production deadline. The total cost for both vehicles came to about $50,000, roughly $400,000 in today's money. What made this even more remarkable was that Jeffries had to create all the gadget housings and mechanisms from scratch, as nothing like this existed in 1966 automotive design. Number 19. The cars were actually heavily modified 1966 Chrysler Imperial Crown sedans, built for durability and gadget weight. Most people think the Black Beauty was some exotic sports car underneath all that customization. Wrong. Dean Jeffries started with two 1966 Chrysler Imperial Crown sedans, and there was brilliant logic behind this choice. The Imperial was Chrysler's flagship luxury model, built on a separate frame that could handle serious modifications without compromising structural integrity. These weren't just big cars, they were tanks. The Imperial Crown came with a 440 cubic inch V8 engine producing 350 horsepower, enough muscle to move the car even after Jeffries added nearly 1,000 pounds of gadgets and armor plating. The separate frame construction meant Jeffries could cut, weld, and modify without worrying about the car folding in half during a stunt. The Imperial's massive trunk became a workshop for housing control systems, hydraulic pumps, and special effects equipment. Its wide body provided plenty of room to hide weapon systems behind panels. The heavy-duty suspension, designed to provide a smooth ride for luxury car buyers, proved perfect for handling the extra weight of steel gadget housings and hydraulic actuators. Even the Imperial's electrical system, overbuilt for its array of luxury features, could handle the additional load of all those blinking lights and motorized panels. Jeffries later said choosing the Imperial was the smartest decision he made on the project. Any lighter car would have been crushed under the weight of Hollywood's imagination. Number 18. The front Green Hornet emblem doubled as a hidden gas gun that sprayed knockout gas. Right there on the front grille, hiding in plain sight, was one of the Black Beauty's cleverest weapons. The Green Hornet emblem wasn't just decoration, it was a functioning gas dispenser that could supposedly knock out bad guys. Here's how it worked. Behind the chrome of the Hornet emblem sat a pressurized canister system connected to a nozzle hidden in the Buick's stinger. When activated from inside the car, the emblem would tilt forward slightly and release a jet of green-tinted smoke meant to represent knockout gas. The special effects team used colored theatrical smoke for filming, harmless but dramatic on camera. The mechanism was surprisingly sophisticated for 1966. A small electric motor controlled the emblem's tilt, while a solenoid valve regulated the gas release. The whole system could be triggered by a switch on Kato's control panel, allowing Bruce Lee to deploy it during chase scenes. What made this gadget particularly clever was its placement, right at the perfect height to spray into the windows of pursuing vehicles. The production team loved this effect so much they used it in nearly every episode. During filming, the smoke would often blow back into the Black Beauty's own ventilation system, forcing the crew to air out the car between takes. The emblem mechanism broke frequently, requiring constant maintenance. By the end of the series, the props department had gone through 6 replacement emblems and countless canisters of theatrical smoke. Number 17, the headlights could flip to reveal green-tinted infrared scan lights for night scenes. The Black Beauty's headlights weren't just for illumination, they were part of an elaborate special effect that was revolutionary for 1966 television. With the flip of a switch, the regular headlight lenses would rotate backward, revealing green-filtered lights that supposedly allowed the Green Hornet to see in total darkness. The mechanism was pure mechanical genius. Each headlight assembly sat on a rotating drum powered by an electric motor. The drum had 2 faces, one with a standard headlight, the other with a green-tinted lens and a different bulb configuration. The rotation took about 2 seconds, just long enough to build dramatic tension on screen. In reality, these infrared scanners were just regular lights with green theatrical gels, but the effect looked incredible on television. The green glow gave night scenes an eerie, otherworldly quality that became a signature of the show. The motors controlling the flip mechanism were surprisingly powerful, necessary because the headlight assemblies were heavy and needed to lock firmly in place. The system drew so much power that using it repeatedly would drain the car's battery, forcing the crew to keep the engine running during multiple takes. Dean Jeffries had originally designed the lights to strobe for a more dramatic effect, but this caused problems with 1966 television cameras and was abandoned after test footage came back unwatchable. Number 16. The grille concealed twin rocket launchers used for dramatic stunts on screen. Behind the Black Beauty's imposing front grille lurked one of its most spectacular weapons: twin rocket launchers that could fire explosive projectiles at pursuing vehicles. The rockets emerged from hidden panels that would slide open on command, revealing the launching tubes. In reality, these were model rocket engines mounted in metal tubes, fired electrically from the dashboard. The rockets were usually small pyrotechnic charges on wires, pulled rapidly away from the car to simulate flight. For wider shots, the special effects team would use actual model rockets, though these were notoriously unpredictable. The launcher mechanism was surprisingly complex. Each tube sat on a pivoting mount that could adjust elevation, though this feature was rarely used on camera. The panels covering the tubes were spring-loaded and would snap open dramatically when activated. The sound effects added in post-production sold the illusion, that distinctive whoosh boom that became synonymous with the Black Beauty's offensive capabilities. During one memorable shoot, a rocket misfired and nearly hit a cameraman, leading to new safety protocols on set. The launcher system required constant maintenance because the pyrotechnic residue would gum up the mechanisms. By the series finale, the rocket launchers had fired over 200 times, though only about 30 shots made it to air. The crew kept spare launcher assemblies ready because the originals would frequently jam during crucial scenes. Number 15. The retractable front battering ram extended from the bumper using hydraulic actuators. When the Black Beauty needed to smash through a gate or ram another vehicle, out came its hydraulic battering ram, a reinforced steel spike that extended 3 feet from the front bumper. This wasn't just a prop, it was a fully functional hydraulic system capable of delivering serious impact. The ram consisted of a hardened steel shaft housed in a reinforced tube beneath the car's frame. Twin hydraulic actuators powered by an electric pump in the trunk could extend the ram in under 2 seconds. The system operated at 1500 psi, giving it enough force to actually punch through wooden barriers and light sheet metal. The engineering was impressive for 1966. The ram had to be perfectly centered to avoid throwing the car off balance during impact. Jeffries installed guide rails and stabilizing collars to keep it aligned. The bumper had a hidden split panel that would separate when the ram deployed, sliding aside on tracks. During filming, the ram proved almost too effective. In one scene, it punched completely through a prop wall, nearly hitting crew members on the other side. After that incident, the production team started using breakaway materials for any scene involving the battering ram. The hydraulic system was so powerful, it would sometimes bend the car's frame during repeated use, requiring reinforcement between seasons. Number 14. A closed-circuit TV system was installed to simulate high-tech surveillance long before it was common in cars. In 1966, the idea of having television cameras in a car was pure science fiction. The Black Beauty made it look routine. The car featured what appeared to be a sophisticated closed-circuit television system, complete with a dashboard monitor that showed the road behind and surveillance footage from remote cameras. Here's the remarkable part: they actually built a working system. Using modified security cameras from industrial applications, the props team installed a real closed-circuit setup in one of the cars. The monitor was a 5-inch black and white television tube mounted in the dashboard, connected to a camera in the rear bumper. This was cutting-edge technology that most viewers had never seen. The system weighed nearly 40 pounds and generated so much heat it would fog up the windshield during long shoots. Power consumption was another problem. The TV system would drain the battery in about 20 minutes if the engine wasn't running. The image quality was terrible by today's standards, but in 1966 it looked like something from the future. To enhance the effect, the production team would often insert pre-filmed footage onto the monitor screen in post-production, showing crystal clear images that the actual system could never achieve. The camera in the rear bumper was constantly getting covered in road grime, requiring cleaning between every take. Despite its limitations, this system predicted the backup cameras that wouldn't become common in cars for another 40 years. Number 13. The car's rear license plate flipped to reveal a hidden weapons compartment for quick shots. One of the Black Beauty's most frequently used gadgets was also one of its simplest: a rear license plate that would flip up to reveal a weapons compartment. With the press of a button, the plate would rotate on a horizontal axis, exposing various defensive weapons. The mechanism was straightforward but effective. The license plate sat on a motorized hinge connected to a small compartment built into the rear bumper. Inside, the props department could mount different weapons depending on the scene. Sometimes a smoke dispenser, other times what appeared to be a small cannon, occasionally a spray nozzle for oil slicks. The flip action took less than a second, accompanied by a satisfying mechanical clunk that sounded great on television. What made this gadget special was its versatility. The compartment was designed with universal mounting brackets, allowing the crew to swap weapons quickly between shots. They had a whole arsenal of attachments: smoke canisters, strobe lights, even a fake laser beam created with mirrors and focus spotlights. The license plate itself was made of lightweight aluminum to reduce strain on the motor. After several episodes, the original steel plate had bent the mechanism beyond repair. The flip mechanism was so reliable it almost never failed during filming, unusual for the Black Beauty's gadgets. This inspired the props team to build backup flip plates for other cars in chase scenes, creating the illusion that the Black Beauty was hitting multiple targets simultaneously. Number 12. A rear-facing Hornet Sting cannon could fire explosive charges or smoke effects. Mounted just above the rear bumper, disguised as part of the car's trim, sat the Hornet Sting, a rotating cannon that could supposedly fire explosive charges at pursuing vehicles. This weapon became one of the Black Beauty's signature defensive tools, appearing in nearly every chase sequence. The cannon was actually a modified industrial paint sprayer mounted on a rotating platform. For explosive effects, the crew would attach small pyrotechnic charges on thin wires, yanking them away from the car at high speed while the camera rolled. For smoke screens, they'd pump theatrical smoke through the nozzle, creating a dense cloud that would obscure the car's escape. The rotating mechanism was surprisingly sophisticated. The cannon could swivel 45 degrees in either direction and elevate up to 30 degrees. Bruce Lee controlled it from a joystick on his side of the dashboard, though most of the actual movement was added in post-production through creative editing. The Sting drew its ammunition from canisters stored in the trunk. The smoke system alone required 3 large tanks of compressed air and theatrical smoke compound. During extended chase scenes, they'd have to stop filming to refill the tanks. One episode called for the Sting to fire continuously for 30 seconds, exhausting the entire smoke supply in a single take. The effect was so impressive they used it in the show's opening credits. Number 11. The trunk housed a sophisticated control console full of blinking lights that did nothing in real life. Open the Black Beauty's trunk and you'd find what looked like NASA mission control, panels of switches, blinking lights, meters, and mysterious dials. This elaborate setup supposedly controlled all the car's weapons and defensive systems. In reality, it was almost entirely for show. Dean Jeffries and his team spent weeks creating this technological masterpiece. They used aircraft surplus parts, telephone switchboard components, and hundreds of individual lights. The console had over 200 switches and buttons, most connected to nothing but their own indicator lights. The few functional controls were mixed in randomly: the smokescreen activator, the rocket launcher trigger, and the emergency battery disconnect were real. but good luck finding them among all the dummies. The blinking lights ran on a separate electrical system with random flasher units, creating the illusion of constant activity. The props team installed different colored bulbs, red for weapons, green for defensive systems, amber for communications, though this color coding meant nothing since the systems were fake. The console consumed so much power they had to install a secondary alternator just to keep the lights running. During night shoots, the trunk console provided its own lighting, bathing the actors in a multicolored glow that looked fantastic on camera. Van Williams once joked that he spent half his screen time pretending to know which switches did what. Number 10. The exhaust ports were modified to emit green smoke during escape sequences. Nothing said dramatic exit quite like the Black Beauty disappearing in a cloud of green smoke. The car's modified exhaust system could pump out colored smoke on command, creating one of the show's most iconic visual effects. The system worked by injecting theatrical smoke compound directly into the exhaust manifolds. Special reservoirs mounted under the car held the smoke mixture, which would vaporize instantly when it hit the hot exhaust pipes. Green dye added to the mixture created the signature color, though it had an unfortunate side effect: it would stain everything it touched. The crew learned this the hard way when green smoke residue covered several blocks of downtown Los Angeles during location shooting. The smoke system had 3 settings: light haze, heavy screen, and what the crew called total blackout. The heaviest setting could completely obscure a city intersection in seconds. Environmental regulations didn't exist in 1966, so they could pump out smoke wherever they wanted. The control switch sat prominently on the dashboard, labeled simply smoke. When activated, you could hear the injection pumps whining as they forced the mixture into the exhaust. The heat from the exhaust would sometimes ignite the smoke compound, creating actual flames instead of smoke. This happened during one dramatic scene, and the producers liked it so much they kept it in the final cut. The green smoke became so associated with the Black Beauty that toy versions included smoke pellets to recreate the effect. Number 9. One of the cars ran a beefed-up drivetrain to carry the extra gadget weight and film equipment. The stunt Black Beauty wasn't just carrying gadgets, it was hauling an extra 1,000 pounds of steel, hydraulics, and special effects equipment. To handle this massive weight, Dean Jeffries had to completely rebuild the drivetrain. The modifications started with the engine. The stock Chrysler 440 was bored out and fitted with high-performance pistons, increasing displacement and power. A high-rise intake manifold and 4-barrel carburetor boosted output to nearly 400 horsepower. The cooling system got enlarged radiators and electric fans to prevent overheating during extended action sequences. The transmission received heavy-duty clutches and reinforced gears to handle the extra torque. The real engineering went into the suspension and brakes. Jeffries installed truck-spec leaf springs in the rear to prevent bottoming out. The front got heavy-duty coil springs and reinforced control arms. The brake system was completely replaced with racing components, larger rotors, multi-piston calipers, and a dual-circuit master cylinder for safety. Even the wheels were special. Standard wheels would bend under the weight during hard cornering. Jeffries had custom steel wheels made, painted to look like the standard Imperial wheels, but twice as strong. The tires were special order heavy load models, inflated to higher pressures to carry the weight. Despite all these modifications, the stunt car was still sluggish. 0 to 60 took nearly 12 seconds and the fuel economy was atrocious, about 6 miles per gallon during action scenes. Number 8. Kato's controls were placed on the passenger side so Bruce Lee could stay in camera view while operating gadgets. Here's something most viewers never noticed. Bruce Lee did almost all the gadget operating while Van Williams drove. This wasn't random. It was carefully planned to keep the show's biggest draw in front of the camera. Dean Jeffries designed the entire control layout around Bruce Lee's position in the passenger seat. The main weapons panel curved toward the passenger side, putting every switch and button within Lee's reach. The joystick for the rear cannon, the smokescreen controls, the rocket launcher triggers, everything angled toward Kato's position. This created some interesting problems. Williams had to lean awkwardly across the car to reach certain controls during solo scenes. The dashboard looked lopsided in wide shots, obviously favoring the passenger side. But it kept Bruce Lee's face and hands in frame during action sequences, which is what the producers wanted. Lee took his role as the Black Beauty's weapons operator seriously. He memorized which switches supposedly controlled which systems and would hit them with precise martial arts influenced movements that looked incredible on camera. His finger movements became part of his character's fighting style, quick, decisive, and deadly accurate. The The control placement also allowed for great two shots of both actors during chase scenes. Williams could focus on driving while Lee handled the combat, creating a dynamic partnership that enhanced their on-screen chemistry. This passenger side control setup influenced how TV cars were designed for decades afterward. Number 7. An onboard reel-to-reel tape deck played the car's dramatic sound effects during takes. Before digital effects and post-production magic, the Green Hornet's crew had to get creative with sound. Hidden in the Black Beauty's trunk was a professional reel-to-reel tape deck that played pre-recorded sound effects during filming. This wasn't for the final audio, that was added later. The tape deck helped the actors time their reactions to weapons firing and gadgets deploying. When Bruce Lee hit the rocket launcher button, the tape would play a whoosh sound. When Van Williams activated the battering ram, they'd hear the hydraulic whine. It gave the scenes realistic timing that would have been impossible to achieve in silent filming. The tape deck was a modified Ampex industrial unit built to withstand the vibration of car scenes. It had a remote control panel mounted under the dashboard, allowing the sound effects operator, usually crammed in the back seat, to trigger specific sounds on cue. The tapes themselves were works of art, containing dozens of carefully timed effects synchronized to typical scene lengths. The system had its quirks. High-speed chases would cause the tape to skip, creating bizarre composite sounds. Hot weather would make the tape stretch, throwing off the timing. During one night shoot, the tape deck caught fire from an electrical short, filling the car with smoke that actually enhanced the scene. The actors grew so dependent on these audio cues that they couldn't perform the scenes without them. Number 6. The windows were coated with a dark green tint that was nearly impossible to see through on set. The Black Beauty's menacing appearance came partly from its impossibly dark windows. The green tint was so dense that seeing inside during daylight was nearly impossible. This created huge problems for filming that required constant creative solutions. The tint was actually a theatrical gel material laminated between glass layers. In 1966, automotive window tinting was primitive, so Jeffries had to use stage lighting materials. The green color matched the show's theme, but the density was chosen for dramatic effect. The Black Beauty needed to look mysterious and impenetrable. The darkness level measured about 5% light transmission, illegal for street use even in 1966. For interior shots, the crew had to blast the car with powerful movie lights just to get an exposure. The actors couldn't see out during night scenes, driving blind while following directions from the crew. Bruce Lee famously memorized the location of every control because he couldn't see them in the dark. The tint created continuity nightmares. Scenes shot at different times of day looked completely different. Morning shots showed green reflections, afternoon shots looked black, and night shots required so much interior lighting that the windows appeared to glow. The props team kept multiple sets of windows with different tint levels, swapping them based on shooting conditions. The dark tint did have one advantage. It hid the fact that stunt drivers, not the stars, were driving during dangerous sequences. Number 5, the car originally had a flamethrower effect, but it was deemed too dangerous and removed early. In Dean Jeffries' original design, the Black Beauty could shoot flames from ports hidden in the front fenders. The producers loved the idea until they saw it in action. The flamethrower system used propane tanks feeding nozzles mounted behind the headlights. When triggered, it would shoot jets of flame 15 feet forward, creating a spectacular but terrifying effect. The first test nearly burned down the workshop. The second test, conducted in a studio parking lot, set a wooden fence on fire. That's when everyone realized this was a lawsuit waiting to happen. The insurance company took one look at the flamethrower and threatened to cancel the production's coverage. The fire marshal banned it from studio property. Even the stunt team, notorious for taking risks, wanted nothing to do with it. The network executives, already nervous about the show's violence, declared it too extreme for television. Jeffries spent 2 weeks and thousands of dollars developing the system, only to remove it before filming the first episode. The mounting points were converted to hold smoke dispensers instead. Sharp-eyed viewers can still spot the original flamethrower nozzles in some promotional photos taken before the system was removed. Years later, Jeffries admitted the flamethrower was impractical anyway. It would have melted the Black Beauty's own paint during extended use. The abandoned flamethrower became legendary among the crew, who would joke about bringing it back for the series finale. Number 4. Dean Jeffries painted the car a custom mix called Black Beauty Black to avoid reflections during night shoots. The Black Beauty's paint job was more than just aesthetic. It was a technical solution to a filming problem. Standard black paint reflected studio lights, like a mirror, ruining shots and revealing equipment. Dean Jeffries developed a custom paint formula specifically for television production. The paint started with a black base, but Jeffries added green pearl and flattening agents to reduce reflectivity. The mixture absorbed light rather than reflecting it, preventing the car from turning into a rolling mirror under studio lights. The final color wasn't truly black. In direct sunlight, it had a deep green undertone that gave the car an otherworldly appearance. The paint required 12 coats to achieve the right depth and finish. Each coat was hand-sanded and polished before the next application. The entire process took 3 weeks per car. The special formula made the paint incredibly expensive. You were about $500 per gallon in 1966 money. The flattening agents also made the paint fragile. It would scratch if you looked at it wrong, requiring constant touch-ups between scenes. The crew kept spray bottles of the custom mix on set for quick repairs. The unique paint became part of the Black Beauty's mystique. No other car had that exact color, and Jeffries kept the formula secret for years. Modern replicas struggle to recreate the original look because the specific pearl additives are no longer manufactured. Number 3, the TV production car suffered constant overheating because the gadget housings blocked airflow. The Black Beauty looked cool on screen, but under the hood, it was burning up. All those gadget housings, armor plates, and hydraulic systems blocked critical airflow, turning the engine compartment into an oven. Normal driving would push coolant temperatures into the red zone within minutes. During action scenes, with the engine working hard to move all that extra weight, the cooling system simply couldn't keep up. The crew kept multiple fire extinguishers on set after 2 minor engine fires during the first month of filming. Jeffries tried everything to solve the problem. Extra cooling fans, larger radiators, hood vents hidden under trim pieces, nothing worked completely. The gadget housings created a wall around the engine, trapping heat like a blast furnace. The hydraulic pumps generated their own heat, adding to the problem. Summer shoots in Los Angeles became nightmares. The cars would overheat just idling between takes. The crew developed a routine. Shoot for 5 minutes, cool down for 15. They'd spray the engine with water between scenes, creating clouds of steam that looked dramatic but meant more delays. The actors suffered too. The interior would reach 130 degrees during extended scenes. Van Williams and Bruce Lee would emerge from the car drenched in sweat, requiring complete wardrobe changes. The production eventually installed aircraft-style cooling ducts, but even these only delayed the inevitable overheating. Number 2. One Black Beauty disappeared for decades and resurfaced in a private collection after a warehouse liquidation. After the Green Hornet ended in 1967, one of the 2 main Black Beauties vanished. For decades, fans wondered what happened to the missing car. The truth was stranger than fiction. The car had been sold to a rental company that supplied vehicles for movies and TV shows. It appeared in various productions throughout the 70s, usually painted different colors and with its gadgets removed or covered. By 1980, it was just another old car in a warehouse, its famous identity forgotten. The car sat in that warehouse for 23 years, slowly deteriorating under layers of dust and junk. When the rental company went bankrupt in 2003, everything was auctioned off. A collector bought the contents of one warehouse site unseen, hoping for vintage movie props. When he started cataloging his purchase, he found a beat-up Imperial under a tarp. Something about it seemed odd. Weird mounting points, strange holes in the body, an unusually complex dashboard. Research revealed the truth. This was the missing Black Beauty. The restoration took 2 years and cost over $200,000. Many original gadgets were missing, but enough remained to confirm its identity. The hydraulic ram mounts, the rotating headlight mechanisms, even some of the trunk console wiring were still intact. Today, this recovered Black Beauty is worth over $1 million, a testament to the enduring appeal of this iconic television car. Number 1, modern replicas often weigh less than the originals because the TV gadgets were built from heavy steel and real hydraulics. Here's the ultimate irony about the Black Beauty. Modern replicas, with all the same gadgets, often weigh 1,000 pounds less than the originals. The reason? 1966 technology was heavy. Dean Jeffries built everything from steel because that's what was available. The hydraulic ram alone weighed 200 pounds. The rocket launcher assemblies were 70 pounds each. The trunk console, with its metal framework and industrial components, added another 150 pounds. Every gadget housing was welded from thick steel plate, built to withstand repeated use during production. Modern builders use aluminum, carbon fiber, and lightweight composites. They install LED lights that weigh ounces instead of pounds. Digital displays replace heavy analog meters. Electric actuators substitute for hydraulic systems. A modern replica can have more functional gadgets than the original while weighing less than a stock Imperial. The original Black Beauty's weight affected everything about the production. Stunt drivers had to relearn how to handle a car that cornered like a truck. The extra weight destroyed tires during chase scenes. Brake pads would burn out after just a few hard stops. Transport trucks struggled to haul the cars between locations. Even the studio's vehicle lift had to be reinforced to handle the weight. This weight difference reveals something fascinating about 1960s special effects. Before CGI and digital enhancement, everything had to be physically built, and built tough enough to survive the television production. The Black Beauty wasn't just a car with props attached, it was an engineering marvel that pushed 1966 technology to its absolute limit. And there you have it, 20 weird facts about the Black Beauty that prove this car was even more incredible than it looked on screen. From Bruce Lee's custom control panel to flamethrowers that were too dangerous for television, this 1966 icon was a mechanical marvel that pushed the boundaries of what was possible in Hollywood car customization. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Drop a comment below and let us know if you remember watching the Green Hornet blast through bad guys with these incredible gadgets. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive into TV car history, hit that like button and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes secrets from your favorite classic shows. Until next time, keep those engines running and those gadgets ready. Number 20, the color that fooled everyone. Here's something that'll mess with your head. The Trans Am in Hooper is painted Mayan red. Not black, not gold. Mayan red. Everyone remembers Burt Reynolds driving black Trans Ams in movies, right? That's the Bandit car everyone thinks of. But this one? Completely different color scheme. And there's a reason for that. They wanted this car to stand out from the Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am that Reynolds had made famous just a year earlier, so they went with this deep, rich red color that almost looks burgundy in certain lighting. The thing is, most people watching the movie don't even notice it's red. Their brains just fill in Burt Reynolds plus Trans Am equals black and gold. It's like a weird optical illusion that happens in your memory. The production team specifically chose Mayan red because it would pop on camera during the stunt sequences. They needed something that would be visible against desert backgrounds and blue skies. Black would have just turned into a blur during the action scenes. Number 19. The missing back seat mystery. Get this. They completely ripped out the rear seat, gone, just not there anymore. And why? To make room for a fake rocket booster. Think about that for a second. Someone at the production meeting actually said, you know what? Let's tear out the back seat and shove a rocket in there. And everyone else apparently said, yeah, that sounds perfectly reasonable. The entire rear compartment was gutted and rebuilt to house this massive prop rocket engine. We're talking about destroying the interior of a brand new Trans Am here. This wasn't some beat up stunt car. This was the hero car, the one used for close-ups and beauty shots. They literally sacrificed passenger capacity for movie magic. The weird part is, the rocket doesn't even work, it's just sitting there, taking up space where people should be sitting. Imagine trying to explain that at a car show. Oh, the back seat? Yeah, we replaced it with a non-functional rocket because movies. Number 18, the dashboard of deception. The interior of this Trans Am looks like someone raided a NASA surplus store and just started gluing things to the dashboard. There are gauges everywhere, warning lights, switches that don't connect to anything, knobs that literally do nothing. The center console is completely covered in fake rocket engine controls. None of it works. It's all just movie props designed to look complicated and dangerous. The prop department went absolutely wild here. They added aircraft gauges, submarine switches, and what appears to be parts from old pinball machines. There's even a red button labeled Danger that's just screwed into the plastic. No wiring, no function, just there. The best part, Burt Reynolds had to pretend to know what all these fake controls did. There's footage of him flipping switches and checking gauges that literally aren't connected to anything. He's basically playing pretend in a very expensive toy car. And somehow, it all looks completely convincing on screen. Number 17, the engine. Nobody expected. Under the hood, things get even weirder. You'd expect a monster Pontiac 455, right? The biggest, baddest engine Pontiac made. Nope. This Trans Am has a 403 cubic inch Oldsmobile V8, an Oldsmobile engine, in a Pontiac. That's like putting a Ford engine in a Chevy. It's just wrong. But there's a reason for this automotive heresy. This was the California mandated version for 1978. Emissions regulations meant that Pontiac couldn't use their own engines in California-bound Trans Ams, so they stuck in this Olds engine instead. The movie car had to be California legal because that's where they were filming. The Oldsmobile 403 made about 185 horsepower. That's it. This rocket car had less power than a modern Honda Accord. The irony is beautiful. They're pretending this thing has a rocket engine while it's actually running one of the most underwhelming power plants ever stuffed into a Trans Am. Number 16, the stunt that wasn't. Here's where things get really bizarre. The big scene where the Trans Am jumps over a canyon. The car that makes that jump isn't the Trans Am. It's not even a car. Technically, it's a jet-powered drag racing vehicle painted Mayan red to look like the Trans Am. They literally built a completely different vehicle just for one stunt. The production team realized early on that no normal car could make the jump they wanted, so they brought in a specialized jet car, painted it to match, and hoped nobody would notice the switch. The jet car had an actual jet engine. The Trans Am had fake rocket controls. The jet car could actually fly through the air. The Trans Am could barely get its front wheels off the ground. They essentially created an entirely different vehicle just to maintain the illusion that this Trans Am was rocket-powered. It's like hiring a stunt double for a car. Number 15, the paint job conspiracy. They painted the jet car exactly the same Mayan red as the Trans Am. Same shade, same finish, same everything. They even added matching stripes and decals. The attention to detail was insane. They wanted the switch to be completely invisible on camera, and it worked. Most people watching the movie have no idea they're looking at two completely different vehicles. The paint job alone took weeks to match perfectly. They had to account for how the color would look at different speeds in different lighting conditions from different camera angles. They even tested it with actual film stock to make sure the reds would match in the final print. This wasn't just slapping some paint on a stunt car. This was a scientific operation to fool your eyes. And 40 plus years later, it's still fooling people. Number 14, the suspension secret. The Hooper Trans Am came equipped with the WS6 high-performance suspension package. Stiffer springs, bigger sway bars, heavy-duty shocks. This wasn't standard equipment. This was the serious performance package that Pontiac offered for people who actually wanted to race their Trans Ams. But here's the thing. They didn't add this suspension for performance. They added it because the car was going to be absolutely beaten to death during filming. The stunt coordinators knew this car was going to take a pounding. High-speed runs through the desert, hard launches, panic stops, the works. A standard suspension would have been destroyed in the first week of filming. The WS6 package included front and rear stabilizer bars that were nearly twice as thick as stock. The springs were rated for much higher loads. Even the bushings were upgraded to polyurethane instead of rubber. It's like they were building a car for the apocalypse, which, considering what happens in the movie, isn't far from the truth. Number 13, the tire controversy. The tires on this Trans Am aren't stock either. Instead of the standard Uniroyal tires that came on Trans Ams, this one's wearing Goodyear white letter performance tires, specifically Goodyear Eagle GTs. These were serious performance tires for 1978, wide, sticky, expensive, and completely unnecessary for a car that's supposed to have a rocket engine. The white letters were turned out for maximum visual impact. This was a very 70s thing. You wanted everyone to know you had performance tires. The bigger the white letters, the better. These Goodyears had massive white lettering that you could probably read from space. But here's the weird part. For the actual stunts, they sometimes switched to different tires entirely. Narrower ones for certain jumps, harder compounds for desert running. They had a whole selection of tires depending on what they were filming that day. Number 12, the wheel swap situation. The wheels aren't original either. Pontiac's factory snowflake wheels, gone. Replaced with polished aluminum mag wheels that look like they belong on a hot rod, not a Trans Am. These weren't even Pontiac wheels. They were aftermarket pieces chosen specifically for their shiny, flashy appearance. The production designers wanted wheels that would catch the light during action sequences. The snowflakes were considered too subtle, too refined. They needed something that screamed modified from 100 yards away. These mag wheels were chrome-plated and polished to a mirror finish. Under the California sun, they were basically 4 spinning disco balls. The reflection was so intense that they sometimes had to tone it down in post-production because it was causing lens flares. Each wheel supposedly cost more than most people's entire car payment in 1978. Number 11, the nose job. Nobody talks about. According to multiple sources, they actually lengthened the nose of the car for the big jump scene. Not the jet car, the actual Trans Am. They modified the front end to make it longer and more stable in the air. This is absolutely insane when you think about it. They cut apart a Trans Am and added extra length to the front chassis. We're talking about major structural modifications here. This wasn't just bolting on a different bumper. They actually extended the frame rails and reshaped the entire front end. The goal was to make the car look more exotic while flying through the air. Because apparently, a flying Trans Am isn't exotic enough on its own. They wanted it to look like something from a science fiction movie. The modifications were hidden under the bodywork, so unless you knew exactly what to look for, you'd never notice. But in freeze frames of the jump, you can see the proportions are all wrong. The nose is too long. The whole front end looks stretched. Number 10. The bridge that was already dying. The bridge they jumped over wasn't even a complete bridge. It was a partially demolished structure that was already being torn down when they started filming. They literally found a bridge that was halfway through demolition and said, "Perfect, let's jump a car over that." The location scouts discovered this bridge by accident. They were looking for canyon locations when someone noticed this half-destroyed bridge in the distance. Instead of seeing a demolition site, they saw an opportunity. The bridge had already had its center span removed. What was left were two sections reaching out toward each other with a massive gap in between. It was basically the perfect setup for a car jump. No special effects needed. The gap was real. The city was already planning to demolish the rest of it, so the production got permission to use it for the stunt. They just had to promise not to damage the parts that were still standing, which, considering they were launching a jet-powered vehicle over it, was a pretty bold promise to make. Number 9. The hospital that became hell. Those explosive smokestack scenes, they weren't filmed at a real factory or industrial site. They used an abandoned World War II era hospital that was scheduled for demolition. They turned a place of healing into a destruction derby playground. The hospital had been empty for years. Broken windows, peeling paint, the perfect backdrop for dangerous stunts. The production team spent weeks rigging it with explosives and breakaway walls. They built fake smokestacks on the roof just so they could destroy them. The local fire department had to be on standby for every day of filming there. They were genuinely concerned the whole place might collapse, which, considering what they were doing to it, wasn't an unreasonable fear. In the movie, it's supposed to be this dangerous industrial location. In reality, it was a creepy old hospital that they turned into their own personal destruction zone. They even left some of the old medical equipment in the background of certain shots. If you look carefully, you can spot old gurneys and wheelchairs. Number 8. The car show circuit mystery. After filming wrapped, something strange happened. General Motors repossessed the Trans Am, not because of unpaid bills or anything like that. They wanted it for promotional purposes. They displayed it at the 1978 Chicago Auto Show and then the Miami Auto Show. Think about that. GM was so proud of this weird, modified, rocket-equipped Trans Am that they wanted to show it off to the public. They put it on a rotating platform with spotlights and everything. People would walk up expecting to see a normal Trans Am, and instead found this bizarre movie car with fake rocket controls and a missing back seat. The car drew huge crowds at both shows. People couldn't believe it was real. Kids were pressing their faces against the glass trying to see the rocket engine in the back. GM representatives had to constantly explain that no, you couldn't actually buy one of these, and no, the rocket wasn't real. But here's where it gets weird. Number 7. The Vanishing Act. After the car shows, the Trans Am just disappeared. Nobody knows exactly what happened to it. Some sources say it was scrapped. Others say it was sold to a private collector who wanted to remain anonymous. There are even rumors it's sitting in a warehouse somewhere, forgotten and covered in dust. This is a car that was featured in a major Hollywood movie, driven by Burt Reynolds, displayed at major auto shows, and somehow nobody thought to properly preserve it or document what happened to it. It's like it just vanished into thin air. Car historians have been trying to track it down for decades. Every few years, someone claims they've found it in a barn somewhere or spotted it at a private collection. But none of these claims have ever been verified. The Hooper Trans Am has become like the Bigfoot of movie cars. Everyone's heard of it. Some people claim they've seen it, but nobody can prove it still exists. Number 6. The signature that shouldn't exist. Here's something that makes the mystery even weirder. On the dashboard of the car, clearly visible in multiple photos from the auto shows, is Burt Reynolds' signature. He signed the dashboard, right there on the passenger side, clear as day. This makes the car exponentially more valuable as a collectible. We're talking about a movie car driven by Burt Reynolds with his actual signature on it. At auction today, assuming it still exists, this thing would be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more. The signature wasn't part of the movie. Reynolds apparently signed it after filming Wrapped, possibly at one of the auto shows. It's done in black marker right across the top of the dashboard pad. Some photos from the Chicago Auto Show clearly show people pointing at the signature and taking pictures. So we know for certain the car existed after filming. We know it had Reynolds' signature. We know GM had it. And then nothing. It just disappears from history. Number 5. The stunt that changed everything. The jump performed by the jet car doubling for the Trans Am is often called one of the greatest single-vehicle stunts of the 1970s. It was so spectacular that it changed how Hollywood approached car stunts forever. The stunt driver hid over 300 feet of distance. In 1978, this was absolutely unprecedented. They didn't have CGI, they didn't have sophisticated safety equipment. They just had a guy in a jet-powered car launching himself over a canyon. The planning for this one stunt took months. They had to calculate speed, angle, wind resistance, landing zone. One miscalculation, and the driver would have been killed. There were no second takes with something like this. They had cameras everywhere, multiple angles, high-speed cameras. They knew they had one shot to get it right, and when they did it, when that jet car launched into the air, everyone on set went completely silent. For a few seconds, nobody breathed, then it landed, and the entire crew erupted in cheers. Number 4. The Frankenstein front end. The modifications to the front end went even deeper than just lengthening it. They actually changed the aerodynamics of the entire nose section. They added subtle spoilers and air dams that weren't visible on camera but changed how the car behaved in the air. The front bumper was reinforced with steel plating. The hood was secured with additional pins to prevent it from flying open during stunts. They even modified the headlight buckets to be more aerodynamic. Every single detail of the front end was analyzed and potentially modified. This wasn't just stretching the nose. This was basically redesigning the entire front third of the car to be something it was never meant to be. An aerospace engineer was actually brought in to consult on the modifications. They used wind tunnel data from aircraft design to figure out how to make a Trans Am fly better. Let that sink in. They used aircraft engineering to modify a muscle car. Number 3, Damnation Alley. The crew nicknamed the big destruction sequence Damnation Alley. This wasn't just a casual nickname. They had it printed on t-shirts. They had a sign made for the set. It became this whole thing. The reference was to a science fiction movie from 1977 that featured massive destruction scenes, but the Hooper crew thought they were going to top it, and in many ways, they did. The Damnation Alley sequence involved destroying multiple buildings, countless explosions, and putting stunt performers in genuine danger. The insurance company almost pulled out when they saw the plans. They had to bring in additional safety experts just to convince everyone it could be done without killing someone. The sequence took 3 weeks to film. 3 weeks of controlled destruction. Every day something was blown up, crashed through, or set on fire. The cast and crew started taking bets on what would go wrong each day, because something always did. Number 2. The powerless rocket car. Despite all the rocket imagery and fake controls, the actual drivetrain remained completely stock. It still had the turbo Hydra-matic 350 automatic transmission, the same 3-speed automatic that came in Grandma's Oldsmobile. This transmission was not built for performance, it was built for smooth, comfortable cruising. It had lazy shift points and a torque converter designed for fuel economy, not acceleration. So you have this car that's supposed to be rocket-powered, but it shifts like a luxury sedan. The contrast between the visual modifications and the mechanical reality is almost comedic. They spent all this money making it look like a rocket car, but mechanically, it was less impressive than a base model Corvette from the same year. The stunt drivers complained constantly about the transmission. During chase scenes, they'd floor it and wait for it to downshift. One driver said it was like trying to race in a car that was half asleep. Number 1, the list that proves everything. Despite all its weirdness, or maybe because of it, the Hooper Trans Am is consistently listed among the top 10 movie Trans Ams of all time. It shows up on every list. Every car magazine that does a movie car roundup includes it. It's become legendary specifically because it's so weird. Think about what this car represents. It's a Pontiac with an Oldsmobile engine, a stretch nose, fake rocket controls, no backseat, and it might not even exist anymore. It's the perfect example of Hollywood excess and creativity combined. Film historians point to this car as representing everything insane about 1970s movie making. No CGI, no digital effects, just pure, dangerous, expensive, practical stunts. They took a brand new muscle car and turned it into something that shouldn't exist. And audiences loved it. The Hooper Trans Am proved that movie cars don't have to make sense. They don't have to be practical. They just have to capture our imagination. And this one, with all its impossible modifications and mysterious fate, definitely did that. And there you have it, 20 absolutely insane facts about the Trans Am from Hooper that prove Hollywood in the 70s was completely out of control in the best possible way. Did you know about that jet car switcheroo? Or that the real car might be lost forever? Drop a comment below if you got any theories about where this legendary Trans Am ended up, because honestly, the mystery is killing us. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive into movie car madness, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we've got plenty more automotive mysteries and Hollywood secrets coming your way. Until next time, keep wondering about those movie cars, because the truth is always stranger than fiction. Number 20. The movie can't even agree on what year the truck is. So right off the bat, we've got a problem. The movie keeps calling McQuade's ride a 1981 Ramcharger, but multiple sources, including the Internet Movie Cars database, suggest it's actually an 83 model. This isn't just a minor detail either. The body styling between these years had noticeable differences that any Dodge enthusiast would spot immediately. It's like the filmmakers just picked a year that sounded good and rolled with it. The confusion gets even worse when you realize that different promotional materials for the film list different years. Some press releases said 81, some said 82, and the actual vehicles used appear to be 83 models. This kind of inconsistency might seem trivial, but for a movie that made such a big deal about this specific truck, you'd think they'd at least get the model year straight. The real kicker? Chuck Norris himself has given different answers in interviews over the years about what year the truck was supposed to be. In one interview from 1985, he called it an 82. In another from the 90s, he went with 81. Even the movie's own star couldn't keep the story straight. And here's where it gets really weird. The vehicle registration props used in the film apparently show different years depending on which scene you're watching. Eagle-eyed viewers have spotted at least 3 different registration stickers throughout the movie. It's almost like they were actively trying to confuse people. This whole year confusion has actually sparked decades of debate among car enthusiasts and movie buffs, with entire forum threads dedicated to figuring out the exact model year. Some fans have gone so far as to analyze the grille patterns, taillight designs, and dashboard configurations frame by frame. The consensus? Nobody really knows for sure, and at this point the mystery has become part of the truck's legend. Number 19. They used at least 5 different Ramchargers during filming. Here's something that'll blow your mind. That one. Iconic Ramcharger. You see McQuade driving throughout the movie? It's actually at least 5 different trucks. The Internet Movie Cars database confirms this, and when you know what to look for, you can spot the differences throughout the film. This is pretty standard for action movies, but the extent to which these trucks differ is kind of hilarious. One has a sunroof, another doesn't. One has yellow fog lights, another has clear ones. Some have different wheel designs. It's like they rated every Dodge dealership in Texas and said close enough. The production team apparently had different trucks for different purposes. There was the hero truck for close-ups and dialogue scenes, which was kept in pristine condition. Then there were the stunt trucks, which took all the abuse. One was specifically set up for the burial scene, another for the jump sequences, and at least one was kept as a backup. What makes this even more interesting is that each truck was modified differently. The stunt coordinator has said in interviews that they had to balance making the trucks look identical on camera while also setting them up for their specific stunts. The burial truck, for instance, had a completely different suspension setup than the jumping truck. And get this, the trucks weren't even all the same color originally. The prop department had to repaint at least 2 of them to match the hero vehicle. If you look closely at some scenes, you can actually see slight variations in the paint shade, especially in direct sunlight. The continuity errors this created are legendary among film nerds. There's one scene where McQuade gets out of a Ramcharger with a sunroof, walks around the front, and gets back into one without a sunroof. It happens in a single take. How did nobody notice this during editing? Or maybe they did notice and just figured nobody would care. This was 1983 after all, before the internet made it easy for obsessive fans to catalog every tiny mistake. Number 18. That sunroof was never a factory option. Speaking of sunroofs, here's a fact that drives Dodge purists absolutely crazy. One of the main Ramchargers used in the film has a clear sunroof, which looks pretty cool in those overhead shots. Problem is, Dodge never offered a factory sunroof option on the Ramcharger. Ever. Not in 81, not in 83, not in any year of production. This was a complete custom job done specifically for the movie. The sunroof was apparently Chuck Norris's idea. He wanted more natural light for certain interior shots and thought it would look cool during action sequences. The modification was done by a custom shop in Dallas, and according to people who worked on the film, it was a nightmare to install. They had to reinforce the entire roof structure because cutting that big hole weakened the body integrity. The funny thing is, this non-existent factory option has confused Ramcharger enthusiasts for decades. There are still people on classic car forums asking where they can find an original sunroof model like the one in the movie. Dealers have stories about customers coming in during the 80s asking to order a Ramcharger with the McQuade sunroof package. It didn't exist, but that didn't stop people from wanting it. The sunroof also created some practical problems during filming. It leaked during rain scenes, which weren't even in the script but happened because of unexpected weather. The seal around the sunroof would sometimes pop open during stunt sequences, requiring multiple takes. And the glass actually cracked during one particularly aggressive jump, though you can't see it in the final film. What's really ironic is that Dodge did offer removable tops on earlier Ramchargers, just not in the model years used in the movie. So they went through all this trouble to add a sunroof to a vehicle that could have had a removable top if they just used a different year model. Hollywood logic at its finest. Number 17. The burial scene defies basic physics. The famous scene where a McQuade's Ramcharger gets buried by a bulldozer and then drives out? Yeah, that's not how physics works. At all. Film goofs documented on IMDb point out that the direction the truck faces when buried doesn't match how it drives out. But that's just the beginning of the problems with this scene. Let's talk about what really happens when you bury a vehicle under several tons of dirt. First, the weight would crush the roof, even with the reinforced structure of a Ramcharger. Second, the dirt would get into everything. The engine, the air intake, the exhaust. There's no way that engine would start, let alone run with enough power to drive out. The movie shows McQuade inside the buried truck, somehow still having enough air to breathe, drink a beer, and pour it on his face. In reality, he'd have maybe a few minutes of oxygen before passing out. The dirt would create an airtight seal around the vehicle, but movie magic says he's got plenty of time for his weird beer ritual. And then there's the escape itself. The film shows the Ramcharger powering straight up through the dirt pile like it's driving through foam packing peanuts. Real dirt doesn't work that way. It's heavy, it's compressed, and it wouldn't just part like the Red Sea because Chuck Norris hit the supercharger button. Stunt coordinators have since admitted they used a combination of lightweight materials mixed with real dirt for the burial. The truck was actually on a hidden ramp system that helped guide it up and out. They also had to do multiple takes because the first few times the truck got stuck halfway out. None of this made it into the behind-the-scenes features, of course. The best part, the supercharger that supposedly gives McQuade the power to escape wouldn't actually help in this situation. If anything, it would just suck more dirt into the engine and kill it faster. But hey, this is a movie where Chuck Norris defeats David Carradine in a bulldozer fight, so realistic physics wasn't exactly a priority. Number 16. The supercharger setup is pure Hollywood fantasy. Let's talk about that supercharger because according to the Internet Movie Cars database, one of the Ramchargers supposedly has a big block 440 engine with a supercharger blower. Fans have speculated it's clutch activated, meaning it can be engaged on demand. This is peak movie supercharger technology, which is to say, it's complete nonsense. Real superchargers don't work like nitrous buttons in Fast and Furious movies. They're belt-driven and run constantly when the engine is running. You can't just flip a switch and suddenly have extra power. But in McQuade's world, that supercharger is basically a magic button that solves all problems. Buried alive? Hit the supercharger. Need to jump a ravine? Supercharger time. The way the movie presents it, the supercharger adds something like 300 horsepower instantly. That's not how forced induction works. Even if you could clutch activate a supercharger, which you can't without destroying your engine, the power delivery would be so violent it would likely break something. The transmission, the differential, something would give. The sound effects for the supercharger are hilariously over the top too. It makes this whining, screaming noise like a jet engine spooling up. Real superchargers don't sound like that. They make a consistent whine that changes with engine speed. The The movie version sounds like someone recorded a dentist drill and played it through a Marshall amplifier. Here's what really happened. The supercharger was mostly just a non-functional prop bolted to the hood for looks. For the sound, they mixed together various mechanical noises in post-production. The actual performance of the trucks during stunts came from good old-fashioned V8 power and careful stunt driving. No magic buttons required. The funny thing is, this fictional supercharger setup has inspired countless replica builds. People have spent thousands of dollars trying to recreate something that never actually existed. There are entire forum threads dedicated to figuring out how to make a clutch-activated supercharger work. Spoiler alert, you can't. At least not in any practical way. Number 15, the siren makes no sense whatsoever. The Ramcharger's siren setup is bizarre even by movie standards. Reports indicate it uses a wheel and strobe power pack, which creates this weird charging and recharging sound that no real emergency vehicle has ever made. It's like they wanted a siren, but also wanted it to sound futuristic and intimidating, so they just made something up. The visual setup is equally strange. There's a mix of red, blue, and white beacon lights on top, giving it what fans describe as a Mad Max cop wagon vibe. This combination wouldn't be legal for any actual law enforcement vehicle in Texas or anywhere else in the United States. Different, states have specific requirements for emergency vehicle lighting, and this random rainbow of beacons doesn't meet any of them. The placement of the lights is also weird. They're mounted on what looks like a custom light bar that sits way too high on the roof. This would create massive wind resistance and probably fly off at highway speeds. But in the movie, McQuade tears around at presumably high speeds with no problems. The siren control system shown in the movie is hilarious too. There's this massive panel of switches and buttons that looks like it belongs in a fighter jet, not a police truck. Real emergency vehicles in the 80s had maybe 2 or 3 switches for lights and siren. McQuade's setup looks like he could launch nuclear missiles with it. What's really funny is that the siren sounds different depending on which truck they're using in the scene. The continuity department apparently didn't think to make sure all 5 trucks had the same siren sound. So sometimes it's high pitch, sometimes it's lower, sometimes it warbles, sometimes it doesn't. And here's the best part. In several scenes, you can hear the siren, but the lights aren't on. Or vice versa. It's like the sound and visual effects departments weren't talking to each other. For a movie that made such a big deal about this being a specially equipped law enforcement vehicle, they sure didn't pay much attention to the details. Number 14, McQuade's 5.2. Engine reference makes no sense in the movie. McQuade refers to My 5.2, which would indicate a 5.2 liter engine, basically a 318 cubic inch motor. This is weird for multiple reasons. First, if you're going to have a supercharged monster truck that can drive out of graves and jump ravines, why would you put one of the smallest V8 engines available in it? The 318 was a decent engine, but it wasn't exactly a powerhouse. But here's where it gets confusing. The Internet Movie Cars database says at least one truck had a 440 big block, which is 7.2 liters, not 5.2. So either McQuade doesn't know what engine is in his own truck, or the scriptwriters just picked random numbers that sounded good. The 318 versus 440 debate has raged in Ramcharger forums for decades. Some fans insist you can hear the difference in the engine sound. Others point to the massive supercharger and say there's no way that's sitting on a small block. The truth is, with 5 different trucks, they probably had different engines in different vehicles. What makes this even funnier is that McQuade is supposed to be this hardcore Texas Ranger who loves his truck more than anything. You'd think he'd know what engine it has, but apparently not. Maybe the beer to the face ritual affected his memory. The 5.2 reference might have been an attempt at accuracy, though. The 318 was actually the standard engine in many Ramchargers of that era. But if you're going to add a fictional supercharger and claim it can perform impossible feats, why stop at accuracy with the engine displacement? It's like putting realistic tires on a flying car. There's also the possibility that 5.2 was code for something else entirely in the script. Maybe it was police code, maybe it was CB radio slang, maybe Chuck Norris just made it up on the spot. We'll never know for sure. But it's become another part of the movie's confusing technical legacy. Number 13, the removable top historical inaccuracy. Real 1981. Ramchargers had welded-in steel roofs with no removable top option, while earlier models did have removable tops. So if the movie wanted a removable top feature, they picked the wrong year to claim the truck was from. This is according to multiple sources, including Motor Trend, and it's the kind of detail that drives Dodge historians crazy. The removable top was actually a big selling point for early Ramchargers. It competed directly with the Chevy Blazer's removable top. But by 1981, Dodge had moved to a fixed roof design for structural integrity and noise reduction. The movie, however, seems to exist in an alternate universe where 1981 models could have whatever features the plot demanded. This isn't just a minor detail either. The structural difference between removable and fixed-top Ramchargers was significant. The fixed-top models had better rollover protection and were generally safer. The removable top models were more fun, but also more dangerous. By putting impossible features on a supposedly 81 model, the movie created expectations that no real Ramcharger could meet. The confusion this caused at Dodge dealerships was apparently significant. Salespeople reported customers coming in asking for the McQuade model with the removable top option that didn't exist for that year. Some dealers allegedly tried to convince customers to buy older models with removable tops, leading to some interesting sales pitches about how the older ones were actually better. What's ironic is that if the filmmakers had just been honest about using an 83 model, or better yet, used an actual older model with a removable top, they could have avoided this whole issue. But that would have required someone on the production team to actually research Ramcharger specifications. Clearly, that wasn't a priority. The removable top confusion persists to this day. Classic car listings often incorrectly state that 81 Ramchargers had removable tops, usually adding, like in Lone Wolf McQuade, as justification. The movie literally rewrote Ramcharger history in people's minds, creating features that never existed. Number 12. The vacuum actuator four-wheel drive system. Was notoriously unreliable according to period owner guides cited by Motor Trend. The vacuum actuator mechanisms used in some four-wheel drive systems were notoriously unreliable. This is particularly relevant because McQuade's Ramcharger seems to have a flawlessly functioning four-wheel drive system that never fails, even after being buried alive. In reality, these systems were incredibly finicky. The vacuum-actuated system was supposed to be an improvement over manual locking hubs. The idea was you could engage four-wheel drive from inside the cab without getting out in bad weather. Great in theory, nightmare in practice. The vacuum lines would crack, the actuators would fail, and suddenly you'd have no four-wheel drive at all. Ramcharger owners from that era have horror stories about these systems. They'd work fine for a few months, then fail at the worst possible moment, like when you're stuck in mud or snow, or trying to escape from being buried alive, though that probably wasn't a common complaint at the dealership. The movie shows McQuade engaging four-wheel drive with a simple switch flip, and it works perfectly every time. No hesitation, no grinding, no vacuum leaks. It's like they existed in an alternate universe where Chrysler quality control was actually good in the early 80s. Mechanics who worked on these vehicles say the vacuum systems were often the first thing to get replaced with manual hubs. The conversion was so common that aftermarket companies made specific kits for it. But in movie land, McQuade's vacuum system works better than any real system ever did. The irony is that all the stunts in the movie probably would have destroyed a real vacuum-actuated system within the first day of filming. Those systems couldn't handle normal off-road use, let alone Hollywood stunt abuse. The stunt trucks likely had completely different four-wheel drive setups, probably manual or even fully locked differentials for maximum traction during stunts. Number 11. The muddy, yet perfectly running engine defies logic. According to scenes and stills from the movie, McQuade's Ramcharger is constantly covered in mud and beat into hell, yet it runs like a dream every single time. This completely ignores how delicate and temperamental these old trucks actually were. Anyone who's owned a 70s or 80s truck knows they required constant maintenance just to run normally. The movie shows the Ramcharger going through water crossings that would hydro-lock any real engine. It gets caked in mud that would clog every air filter and radiator fin. It takes impacts that would misalign the frame and destroy the suspension. But turn the key, and it starts right up every time. No hesitation, no rough idle, no warning lights. Real Ramchargers from this era had their share of issues. Carburetor problems were common, especially in dusty or muddy conditions. The ignition systems didn't like moisture. The cooling systems were adequate for normal driving but would overheat under extreme conditions. Yet McQuade's truck seems immune to all of these real-world problems. There's one scene where the truck is literally steaming from being pushed so hard, covered in mud and dust, and probably hasn't had an oil change in years based on how McQuade treats it. Next scene, purrs like a kitten. It's like the truck has Wolverine's healing factor. The electrical systems in these trucks were particularly vulnerable. Water and mud would cause shorts, corroded connections, and failed components. But McQuade's truck has power windows, power locks, and every electrical accessory working perfectly, despite being basically submarine tested in several scenes. The suspension components shown taking massive impacts would be destroyed in reality. Ball joints, tie rods, shocks, springs, everything would be bent or broken after the stunts shown in the movie. But the next scene shows the truck driving perfectly straight with no alignment issues. It's movie magic at its most obvious. Mechanics have calculated that the abuse shown in the movie would require a complete rebuild of the truck at least 3 times over. But in the film, it seems to run on pure Chuck Norris energy, never needing more than maybe a dramatic wipe down between scenes. Number 10. Multiple engine specifications across different trucks. Because multiple Ramchargers were used during filming, the engine specs probably varied significantly from truck to truck. According to the Internet Movie Cars database and fan speculation, some had 318s, some had 360s, and maybe even bigger engines. This creates a funny situation where McQuade's truck has different performance capabilities depending on which scene you're watching. The 318 cubic inch engine was the base V8 option and produced around 130 horsepower in stock form. The 360 was the middle option with about 170 horses. The 440 big block, if any trucks actually had it, would be pushing 250 horsepower or more. These are significant differences that would completely change how the truck performs. You can actually notice this in the film if you pay attention. Some scenes show the truck accelerating quickly and sounding aggressive. Other scenes, probably with the 318 truck, show more leisurely acceleration and a quieter exhaust note. It's like McQuade's truck has multiple personality disorder. The transmission options would have varied too. Some trucks might have had 3-speed automatics, others 4 speeds, maybe even a manual transmission for certain stunts. Each combination would handle differently, sound different, and perform differently. But the movie treats them all as the same magical super truck. Fuel economy would have ranged from terrible to absolutely horrendous depending on the engine. The 318 might get 12 miles per gallon on a good day. The 440, you'd measure that in gallons per mile. Yet McQuade seems to drive forever without ever stopping for gas. Must be another supercharger feature. The cooling requirements for these different engines would have been vastly different too. A 440 in Texas heat would need a massive radiator and probably auxiliary coolers. A 318 could get by with stock cooling. Yet all the trucks in the movie seem equally capable of handling extreme conditions without overheating. This mix of specifications has led to decades of arguments about what the real McQuade Ramcharger specs were. The answer is there was no single specification. It was whatever truck happened to be available for that particular scene. Number 9, a cop wagon. That was never a cop wagon. The movie Ramcharger is styled like a law enforcement vehicle, but most Ramchargers were civilian SUVs, not typical cop wagons. This is an important distinction because the movie treats it like it's some kind of standard issue Texas Ranger vehicle. In reality, law enforcement agencies rarely used Ramchargers for patrol duties. They were too expensive, too fuel inefficient, and frankly, too unreliable for police work. Police departments in the 80s preferred sedan-based vehicles for patrol work. The Dodge Diplomat, Plymouth Grand Fury, and Chevrolet Caprice were the real cop cars of that era. SUVs were sometimes used for special units or rural areas, but a Ramcharger would have been an unusual choice. The Texas Rangers in particular typically used sedans or pickup trucks, not full-size SUVs. The equipment shown in McQuade's Ramcharger is also wrong for actual law enforcement use. Real police vehicles had standardized equipment installed by certified upfitters. They had specific radio systems, light packages, and safety equipment that met state requirements. McQuade's truck looks like someone went to an automotive accessories store and bought one of everything from the emergency vehicle aisle. The interior setup is particularly ridiculous. There's no cage separating the front and back, no proper radio mount, no standard police equipment storage. It's basically a civilian Ramcharger with some lights slapped on top and a siren that makes spaceship noises. Real police vehicles are purposefully modified for officer safety and equipment accessibility. This isn't just movie nitpicking either. The film created this image of Texas Rangers driving around in super modified Ramchargers that never existed. People still think this was actually a thing. There are forum posts asking where to find surplus Texas Ranger Ramchargers from the 80s. They don't exist because they never existed. The closest thing to reality would have been some rural sheriff departments that might have had a Ramcharger for specific purposes like search and rescue or off-road pursuits. But even then, they wouldn't have been modified like McQuade's truck. They would have had basic emergency lights and maybe a push bar. That's it. Number 8, the beer ritual. That makes no sense. The scene where McQuade opens a beer inside the buried truck and pours it on his face is weird enough on its own, but according to Wikipedia and fan discussions, this is apparently his way of preparing to engage the supercharger and escape. It's presented as some kind of mystical ritual that gives him the strength or clarity to perform the impossible. Let's think about this for a second. You're buried alive, oxygen is limited, and your solution is to waste precious energy opening a beer and pouring it on yourself. This is peak action movie logic, where being cool is more important than being alive. The beer isn't even cold. It's been sitting in his truck in Texas heat, then buried under tons of dirt. That's going to be one warm foam exploded mess of a beer. But McQuade pours it on his face like it's a refreshing mountain stream. The symbolism is supposedly that he's recharging himself like his supercharged engine. Get it? It's like a metaphor or something. Except it's a really stupid metaphor that involves wasting beer and valuable oxygen while you're suffocating. Some fans have tried to rationalize this scene. Maybe the alcohol gives him courage, maybe the cold liquid keeps him alert, maybe it's a psychological trigger that helps him focus. But really, it's just Chuck Norris doing something weird because it looked cool in the script. The scene has become so iconic that people actually recreate it. There are YouTube videos of people pouring beer on their faces before attempting difficult tasks. It's become a meme, which is probably not what the filmmakers intended. They wanted badass, they got bizarre. What makes it even funnier is that this is presented as something McQuade regularly does. Like, this is his standard operating procedure for tough situations. Bad guys surrounding you, beer face. About to fight David Carradine, beer face. Buried alive, definitely, beer face time. It's his solution to everything. Number 7, the escape velocity problem. According to fans and physics enthusiasts, after McQuade's beer facial, he absolutely floors the throttle, hits the supercharger, and drives straight out of his grave. This is presented as a triumphant moment of human determination and machine power. In reality, it's a complete violation of several laws of physics, and the acceleration needed would probably kill everyone inside. Let's do some rough math here. The truck is buried under what appears to be at least 6 feet of dirt. To burst through that in the dramatic fashion shown, the Ramcharger would need to accelerate from 0 to probably 30 miles per hour in the space of about 10 feet. That's a G-force that would slam everyone into their seats hard enough to cause serious injury. The traction problem alone makes this impossible. The tires would just spin in place against the dirt. Even with 4-wheel drive, even with a magical supercharger, you're not getting the grip needed to accelerate that quickly in loose dirt. The tires would dig themselves deeper, not propel the truck upward. Then there's the structural integrity issue. The force needed to burst through that much dirt would likely rip the body off the frame. These trucks weren't built for that kind of stress. The roof would collapse, the windows would shatter, the doors would probably blow off. But in the movie, the truck emerges basically intact. The trajectory shown is also impossible. The truck comes out at an angle that suggests it somehow turned while underground. Dirt doesn't work that way. You can't steer through solid material. Yet McQuade emerges at the perfect angle to land dramatically and drive away. The engine survival is the biggest miracle. After being buried, somehow starting despite no air intake, then being pushed hard enough to escape, any real engine would be completely destroyed. Rod knock, blown head gaskets, cracked block, pick your catastrophic failure. But McQuade's engine keeps running perfectly. The landing after the escape would have destroyed the suspension, probably broken McQuade's back, and definitely caused frame damage that would make the truck undrivable. But next scene, driving along like nothing happened. Movie physics are amazing. Number 6, the mysterious MSRP discrepancy. Despite the 1981 label in fan lore and the movie's presentation of this as some kind of super truck, the actual MSRP for a real 1981 Ramcharger was under $10,000. According to Automart USA, it ranged from $8,688 to $9,941. That's less than a well-equipped sedan costs today, adjusted for inflation. This creates a funny situation where McQuade's supposedly special law enforcement vehicle would have been one of the cheaper truck options available. For context, a loaded Chevy Suburban from the same era could cost significantly more. Yet the movie treats this thing like it's some kind of exotic super machine that only a legendary Texas Ranger could handle. The base price got you a pretty basic truck too: manual transmission, manual windows, manual locks, AM radio if you were lucky. To get power options and air conditioning, you were looking at the higher end of that price range. McQuade's truck, with all its fictional equipment, would have cost a fortune in accessories alone. The aftermarket modifications shown in the movie would have easily doubled the truck's value. That supercharger setup, even if it worked like the movie claims, would be thousands of dollars. The custom light bar and siren system, more thousands. The magical berry-proof ceiling, priceless, because it doesn't exist. What's funny is that people have tried to build McQuade replica trucks and discovered it costs way more than buying an actual vintage Ramcharger. A decent condition 81 to 83 Ramcharger now costs anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000. Add movie-accurate modifications, and you're looking at $50,000 or more for a tribute build. The movie also implies this is McQuade's personal vehicle that he uses for work, on a Texas Ranger. Salary in the 80s, even a base model Ramcharger would have been a significant purchase. Add in the fuel costs of daily driving a big V8 in Texas, and McQuade must have been independently wealthy or deeply in debt. The economic reality versus the movie presentation shows Hollywood's typical disconnect from real-world finances. They needed a tough-looking truck and didn't care that their hero supposedly bought and maintained something completely impractical on a government salary. Number 5, the multiple Ramcharger visibility errors. The use of 5 different trucks created some hilarious continuity errors that are visible throughout the film. These aren't subtle mistakes either. We're talking about completely different vehicles appearing in the same scene, sometimes in the same shot. It's like the editors just gave up trying to match them. The most obvious is the sunroof situation. There's literally a scene where McQuade gets out of a truck with a sunroof, walks maybe 10 feet, and gets back into a truck without one. It happens in what's supposed to be one continuous sequence. How did nobody in post-production notice this? Or maybe they did and just didn't care because fixing it would mean reshooting. The fog lights change color between yellow and clear depending on which truck they're using. Sometimes they're on, sometimes they're off, sometimes they don't exist at all. There's one chase scene where the fog lights change 3 times in about 30 seconds of screen time. It's like watching a vehicular mood ring. The wheels and tires are different too. Some trucks have chrome wheels, others have painted steel wheels. The tire sizes vary, which actually affects how the truck sits and handles. In some shots, the Ramcharger looks lifted, in others, it's stock height. McQuade's truck apparently has adjustable suspension that changes based on camera angle. The damage continuity is even worse. The truck gets beat up in one scene, showing specific dents and scratches, then appears pristine in the next shot. Then, different damage appears. It's like the truck has selective healing abilities, fixing some problems while developing new ones spontaneously. Interior shots reveal different dashboards, different steering wheels, even different seat materials. One truck has a wood grain dash, another has black plastic. The seats go from cloth to vinyl and back to cloth. McQuade must have the world's fastest interior detailing service. The best continuity error involves the supercharger itself. In some shots, it's there, prominent on the hood. In others, taken from different angles or with different trucks, it's completely absent. Then, it magically reappears for the next action sequence. It's a quantum supercharger that exists only when observed directly. Number 4, the impossible Whelen siren sound. The Whelen strobe power pack siren system reportedly used on the truck creates a sound that no actual emergency vehicle has ever made. According to the Internet Movie Cars database, this system makes a unique charging and recharging sound that seems designed more for alien invasions than law enforcement. It's like they wanted something that sounded futuristic and menacing rather than functional. Real Whelen sirens from that era had specific program tones for different situations. You had wail, yelp, and high-low patterns. What you didn't have was the weird electronic warbling that McQuade's truck produces. It sounds like someone put a synthesizer through a broken amplifier and recorded the result. The charging sound, in particular, makes no sense. It builds up like a capacitor charging, then releases in this electronic scream. Real sirens don't need to charge, they're either on or off. This Hollywood interpretation suggests the siren is somehow building up sonic energy before releasing it. That's not how sound works. The visual strobe system is equally ridiculous. The lights flash in patterns that would cause seizures in anyone watching. Real emergency vehicles use specific flash patterns that are visible but not disorienting. McQuade's lights look like a disco having a nervous breakdown. There are multiple colors, multiple speeds, and no apparent synchronization. What makes this even funnier is that different scenes have different siren sounds, probably because they couldn't consistently recreate their made-up noise. Sometimes it's high-pitched, sometimes lower, sometimes it warbles, sometimes it's steady. The truck apparently has multiple personality disorder that extends to its siren system. The controls shown for this system are absurd too. There's a panel with at least a dozen switches and buttons, none of which are labeled. McQuade somehow knows exactly which combination to hit for each situation. It's like playing a very dangerous musical instrument while driving. In one scene, the siren is clearly audible, but the lights aren't on. In another, the lights are going crazy, but there's no siren. The sound and visual effects departments apparently didn't coordinate their efforts. Or maybe the Whelen system just works on its own schedule, independent of what the driver wants. Number 3, the frame integrity magic. Throughout the movie, McQuade's Ramcharger takes impacts that would completely destroy the frame of any real truck, yet it keeps driving perfectly straight with no structural damage. We're talking about jumps that would bend the frame, crashes that would twist the chassis, and impacts that would turn any real vehicle into modern art. But McQuade's truck has apparently been built from adamantium. The jump scenes alone would destroy a real Ramcharger. These trucks had conventional ladder frames that were strong for their time, but not designed for Dukes of Hazzard-style aerobatics. Landing from even a modest jump would bend the frame, misalign everything, and probably crack several welds. The movie shows jumps that would require a complete rebuild afterward. The burial scene would have crushed the frame rails from the weight of the dirt. Even if the magical supercharger could somehow provide escape velocity, the frame would be so compromised that the truck would fold in half once it emerged. But nope, it drives away straighter than it went in. There's a scene where the truck basically T-bones another vehicle at speed. This would push the front frame horns back, destroy the radiator support, and probably tweak the entire chassis. Next scene. The truck is maybe a little dusty but structurally perfect. It's like the frame repairs itself between takes. The side impacts shown would be even worse. Ramchargers had minimal side impact protection. A serious side hit would push the frame out of square, making the truck crab walk down the road if it could move at all. McQuade's truck takes multiple side hits and drives away like nothing happened. The suspension mounting points would fail long before the frame itself. These are high-stress areas that take massive forces during stunts. The shock towers would crack, the spring hangers would bend, the control arm mounts would tear out. But McQuade's suspension mounts are apparently welded by the gods themselves. The best part is when the truck goes through water crossings that would hydro-lock the engine and potentially crack the frame from thermal shock. Hot frame rails hitting cold water can cause stress fractures. But McQuade's frame is apparently immune to the laws of thermodynamics too. Number 2, the removable parts that aren't removable. The film shows various parts of the Ramcharger being removed or modified in ways that aren't actually possible with the real vehicle. Doors come off and go back on like they're held by magnets. Body panels apparently unbolt themselves for convenient camera angles. The roof structure seems to change configuration based on scene requirements. It's like the truck was built from Lego blocks. The rear window, which was fixed glass in real Ramchargers of that era, sometimes appears to be missing entirely for interior shots. Then it's back for exterior shots. Then it's gone again. This isn't damage from stunts, it's just convenient disappearing for better camera angles. The whole window just phases in and out of existence. The hood, despite having a massive supercharger supposedly bolted through it, comes off and goes back on between scenes like it weighs nothing. In reality, that hood would need multiple people to remove and would require disconnecting various supercharger components. But in the movie, it's apparently held on by wishes and hope. The doors are the best part. There are scenes where the doors are clearly removed for filming, allowing better camera access to the interior, but they forgot to explain why McQuade would be driving around without doors. So in some shots, the doors are there. Cut to a different angle, no doors. Cut back, doors are magically back. The fenders take damage that would require complete replacement, then appear perfect in the next scene. Not repaired, not hammered out, just factory fresh. It's like the truck has a reset button that returns it to showroom condition between action sequences. The bumpers deserve special mention. They get ripped off, bent, twisted, and generally abused, yet they keep reappearing in perfect condition. The front bumper, in particular, seems to have regenerative properties. It takes impacts that would turn it into abstract art, then returns to its original shape. Even the interior panels seem to remove themselves for convenience. The door panels disappear and reappear. The dash pad changes from damaged to perfect. The headliner goes from sagging to tight. It's automotive magic that would make David Copperfield jealous. Number 1. The engine that defies all logic. The number one weirdest fact about McQuade's Ramcharger is that the engine apparently runs on pure impossibility. Throughout the film, this engine survives conditions that would destroy any real motor in seconds. It runs without air while buried, operates underwater, survives impacts that would crack the block, and never seems to need basic maintenance like oil, coolant, or even gasoline. This isn't just movie convenience, it's a complete rejection of how internal combustion engines work. The burial scene alone presents multiple impossibilities. When buried, the engine would have no air intake for combustion, the exhaust would be blocked, creating back pressure that would stall the engine immediately. The dirt would clog every opening, filter, and breather. Yet when McQuade turns the key, it fires right up like it's been sitting in a climate-controlled garage. The water crossing scenes are equally ridiculous. The truck drives through water deep enough to submerge the engine. Water would get sucked into the intake, hydrolock the cylinders, and bend the connecting rods into pretzels. The electrical system would short out. The exhaust would fill with water. But McQuade drives through like it's a puddle. The engine makes different sounds depending on which truck they're using and which audio track they dubbed in. Sometimes it sounds like a small block, sometimes like a big block, sometimes like a diesel, and occasionally like a jet engine. It's the vocal impressionist of engines, able to mimic any sound the scene requires. The temperature management is impossible too. The engine operates in Texas heat, gets buried in insulating dirt, drives through cooling water, and never shows realistic temperature behavior. No overheating, no vapor lock, no cooling system failures. The temperature gauge, when visible, always shows perfect operating temperature. The maintenance situation is the best part. We never see McQuade change the oil, check the fluids, or perform any maintenance. After the abuse this engine takes, it would need a complete rebuild every few days, but it keeps running perfectly, suggesting it's self-maintaining or possibly powered by Chuck Norris's beard. The fuel consumption alone would be astronomical. A supercharged big block doing the stunts shown would get maybe 4 miles per gallon. The burial escape would probably burn through 5 gallons just breaking free, yet we never see McQuade stop for gas. The truck apparently has either an infinite fuel tank or runs on determination. The real kicker? After all this abuse, the engine never loses power, no compression loss, no valve problems, no bearing failures. It maintains full power from the first scene to the last, defying everything we know about mechanical wear and tear. This engine doesn't follow the laws of physics, thermodynamics, or basic mechanical principles. It's the ultimate movie engine, powered by pure script convenience and Chuck Norris magic. And there you have it, that's 20 weird facts about McQuade's supposedly 1981 Dodge Ramcharger that prove Hollywood didn't let little things like physics, logic, or mechanical reality get in the way of a good action scene. The truck that became a cult classic was actually 5 different trucks with impossible features, defying every law of nature while Chuck Norris poured beer on his face and drove out of graves. Did any of these facts surprise you? Or do you have your own favorite impossible moment from the movie? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more breakdowns of Hollywood's most ridiculous vehicles, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because if Lone Wolf McQuade taught us anything, it's that reality is optional when you've got a supercharger and a bad attitude. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time when we dive into another gloriously impossible piece of movie machinery. Number 20, the show used 6 different cars to play one. When you watch Nash Bridges cruise around San Francisco in that yellow Cuda, you weren't watching one car. You were watching 6. The production team needed multiple vehicles to handle all the different filming requirements: beauty shots, stunts, driving scenes, close-ups. 5 of them were 1970 Plymouth Barracudas and Cudas, not 1971s. The 6th one gets even weirder. It was a 1973 coupe that they converted to look like a convertible. Think about that. They took a hardtop from 2 years later and literally cut the roof off to make it work. Each car had a specific job on set. Some were set up for interior shots with camera mounts. Others were rigged for stunts. One was kept pristine for those glamour shots where the car needed to look perfect. The continuity department must have had nightmares trying to keep track of which car was which. Imagine being the guy responsible for making sure the right car showed up for the right scene. You'd need a spreadsheet just to keep them straight. Number 19. Not a single one had a real Hemi engine during filming. This is where things get really deceptive. The show constantly referred to Nash's ride as a Hemi Cuda. Characters talked about the Hemi, Nash bragged about the Hemi. The whole mystique of the car was built around that legendary 426 Hemi engine. But here's the truth. None of the cars used during the actual filming of the show had a Hemi engine. Not one. What did they have instead? A mix of 3 18 cubic inch V8s and 4 40 engines. Regular Mopar power plants. Good engines, sure. But not Hemis. The 318 was basically an economy engine compared to the Hemi. The 440 had decent power, but it wasn't even close to the same thing. They were lying to us the entire time. Every single episode where Nash talked about his Hemi, he was essentially talking about a fantasy. The sound you heard when the car started up, not a Hemi. The engine you glimpsed under the hood in those quick shots, not a Hemi. It was all Hollywood magic, or, in this case, Hollywood deception. Number 18, the iconic yellow paint wasn't even a Mopar color. That bright yellow paint that made Nash's Cuda instantly recognizable, it wasn't Curious Yellow, the factory Mopar, high-impact color from 1970. It wasn't Lemon Twist either. It was just some random yellow from Sherwin-Williams, an off-the-shelf hardware store paint. The production team originally planned to use Lemon Twist, which was an authentic Mopar color. They probably thought they were being historically accurate, but when they did camera tests, the color didn't film well. It either looked washed out or too dark on screen. So they went to Sherwin-Williams and picked a yellow that would pop on television. This is actually pretty common in Hollywood. Real car colors often don't translate well to film or video. They need something that will look good under studio lights and maintain consistency across different shooting conditions. But it's still funny that one of the most famous muscle cars on television was wearing house paint. Imagine pulling up to a car show with your restored Cuda painted in authentic Sherwin-Williams interior latex. Number 17, Don Johnson. Originally wanted a completely different car. Before Nash Bridges became synonymous with that yellow Cuda, Don Johnson had his heart set on something else entirely. A Pontiac GTO Judge. Specifically, he wanted Nash to drive a bright orange Judge with the wild graphics and that massive rear spoiler. Can you imagine Nash Bridges in a Judge instead? The whole vibe of the show would have been different. The Judge was more outrageous, more in-your-face with those psychedelic stripes and that cartoonish styling. Johnson apparently pushed pretty hard for the GTO. He liked the Judge's aggressive look and its street racing heritage. But the producers had other ideas. They convinced him that the Cuda was the better choice. More sophisticated, more mysterious, more fitting for a San Francisco detective. The Cuda had that long, sleek profile that looked better in motion. It photographed better from multiple angles. And let's be honest, the convertible aspect gave them more filming options. You can't get those shots of Nash and Joe driving with the wind in their hair in a hardtop Judge. Still, somewhere in an alternate universe, Nash Bridges is cruising around in an orange GTO. Number 16, they used cheaper Barracudas dressed up as Cudas. Here's something the average viewer would never notice. Several of the cars weren't even Cudas at all. They were regular Plymouth Barracudas dressed up to look like the more expensive Cuda models. What's the difference? The Cuda was the high-performance version of the Barracuda. It came with bigger engines, better suspension, and more aggressive styling. The Barracuda was the base model, more of a secretary's car than a street racer. But for filming purposes, especially for stunt work, why destroy an actual Cuda when you could use a cheaper Barracuda? They added Cuda badges, hood scoops, and other trim pieces to make them look correct. From more than 10 feet away, you'd never know the difference. This is standard practice in Hollywood. Why wreck expensive cars when cheaper alternatives exist? The stunt coordinators didn't care if they were destroying real Cudas or dressed up Barracudas. As long as they looked right on camera and could take the abuse, that's all that mattered. It's actually smart from a production standpoint. Save the nice cars for the beauty shots and use the cheap ones for the dangerous stuff. Number 15, the rubber front bumper, was wrong for the year. Eagle-eyed Mopar. Enthusiasts noticed something off about Nash's Cuda right away. It had a rubber front bumper. That's a problem because 1971 Cudas didn't come with rubber bumpers from the factory. They had chrome. The rubber bumper was actually from a different year. This might seem like a tiny detail, but for car people, it's huge. It's like wearing a Yankees jersey with the wrong number. Everyone who knows will spot it immediately. Why did they use the wrong bumper? Probably practical reasons. Rubber bumpers are better for stunt work. They don't dent as easily. They're cheaper to replace. And they don't reflect studio lights the way chrome does, which can cause problems during filming but it drove purists crazy. Here's this supposedly ultra-rare, completely original Hemi Cuda convertible, and it has the wrong bumper. It would be like finding the Mona Lisa wearing a digital watch. Some fans created elaborate explanations for why Nash's specific car might have had a rubber bumper. Maybe it was a special order. Maybe Nash had it changed. But the real answer is simpler. The prop department probably just grabbed whatever bumper was available. Number 14. The fictional backstory didn't even make sense. According to the show's lore, Nash got the Cuda from his brother Bobby before Bobby shipped out to Vietnam. It was supposed to be this emotional connection to his family and his past. Sweet story, right? Except there's one huge problem. Bobby shows up later in the series, alive and well. So either he came back from Vietnam and never asked for his incredibly valuable car back, or the writers just forgot their own backstory. This kind of continuity error happens all the time in long-running shows. Writers change, producers forget details, and suddenly, the mythology doesn't add up. But this was a pretty big one. The car was supposedly this important link to Nash's brother, this symbol of their relationship, and then Bobby just appears, and nobody mentions it. Did Nash steal his brother's car? Did Bobby give it to him permanently? Was it ever really Bobby's car? The show never explains. It's like they hoped viewers would just forget about the original story. And honestly, most people probably did. But for those paying attention, it was another crack in the facade of Nash's legendary Cuda. Number 13. The 14 ever made claim was pure fiction. Nash loved to brag that his car was one of only 14 ever made. He dropped this fact to impress suspects, charm eye, witnesses, or just show off at stoplights. It became part of the car's mystique on the show. 1 of 14, incredibly rare, practically priceless, total nonsense. The real production numbers for 1971 Hemi Cuda convertibles were even more extreme. Plymouth built exactly 7 Hemi Cuda convertibles in 1971. 7, not 14. And of those 7, only 2 had 4-speed manual transmissions like Nash's car supposedly had. So if Nash's car had been real, it would have been 1 of 2. Not 1 of 14. The writers probably picked 14 because it sounded rare but not impossibly rare. 7 might have seemed too unbelievable. Or maybe they were confusing different production numbers, possibly combining convertibles with hardtops, or mixing up different years. Or maybe they just made it up completely. Either way, every time Nash said 1 of 14, he was spreading false information about one of the rarest muscle cars ever built. Number 12. One car eventually got a real Hemi after the show. Remember how we said none of the cars had real Hemi engines during filming? Well, that changed after the show ended. One of the cars, specifically the one used for close-up beauty shots and still photography, eventually got the full treatment. During a complete restoration, someone decided to make it real. They installed an actual 426 Hemi engine, the legendary elephant motor, the king of muscle car engines. Finally, one of Nash's Cudas had the heart it always claimed to have. But here's what makes it even more interesting. They kept all the camera mounts from the TV production. They kept the special wiring that was installed for filming. They basically preserved it as both a real Hemi Cuda and a piece of television history. It's like if someone restored the General Lee, but kept the welded shut doors. You're preserving both the car and its Hollywood story. This restored version became the real Nash Bridges Cuda in the eyes of collectors. Even though it wasn't born with a Hemi, it eventually became what it always pretended to be. Number 11. The restored versions are now worth more than real ones. This is where things get really bizarre. The fake TV Cudas, the ones that were really 1970 Barracudas with the wrong engines and hardware store paint, are now worth insane money. We're talking $500,000 or more. That's sometimes more than actual numbers matching factory original Hemi Cuda convertibles. How does that make any sense? Because they're not just cars anymore. They're television artifacts. They're pieces of pop culture history. Owning one of Nash's Cudas is like owning this suit from Iron Man or the DeLorean from Back to the Future. The fact that they're not real Cudas doesn't matter to buyers. What matters is their connection to the show. They want to own the car Don Johnson sat in, the car that chased bad guys through San Francisco, the car that millions of viewers fell in love with every week. One restored example even has Don Johnson's autograph and signatures from other cast members preserved under clear coat. Try getting that on your numbers matching Survivor car. The market has decided that television fame trumps automotive authenticity. Number 10. The cars had different transmissions for for different scenes. Here's something most viewers never realized. The production used both automatic and manual transmission cars sometimes in the same episode. 2 of the 6 cars had manual transmissions, the rest were automatics. Why does this matter? Because Nash was constantly shown shifting gears. The character was supposed to be this expert driver who could handle a 4-speed like a pro. But half the time, the car he was driving didn't even have a clutch. The sound effects department had to add shifting sounds in post-production. When you heard that distinctive mechanical click of changing gears, it might have been completely fake. The car might have been an automatic just cruising along while the sound editor added manual transmission noises. For driving scenes where Don Johnson was actually behind the wheel, they usually use the automatics. Safer, easier, and Johnson didn't have to worry about stalling in the middle of a take. For stunt scenes where they needed precise control, they'd use the manuals. The stunt drivers could heel toe, downshift into corners, and generally drive more aggressively, but maintaining continuity must have been a nightmare. Quick, which car did we use in the scene before lunch? Number 9, they cut the roof off. A 1973 to make a convertible. We mentioned earlier that one of the 6 cars was a 1973 coupe converted to a convertible. But let's really think about what that means. They took a perfectly good hardtop Cuda and literally sawed the roof off. This wasn't a professional convertible conversion. This was a TV production on a deadline needing another drop top for filming. The structural integrity must have been completely compromised. Convertibles are engineered differently from the ground up. They have reinforced frames, different door pillars, special bracing. You can't just cut the top off a coupe and call it a day. But for TV purposes, good enough. They probably reinforced it somewhat, maybe added some structural support underneath, but it was never going to be as solid as a real convertible. That car was basically held together by prayer and welding. Imagine being the stunt driver assigned to that particular vehicle. Hey, we need you to do a high-speed chase in the car. We modified with a Sawzall last week. Good luck. It's actually amazing it held together through filming, testament to either good engineering or pure luck. Number 8. The paint job made continuity. Nearly impossible. That bright Sherwin-Williams yellow might have looked great on screen, but it created massive problems for the production. The paint would fade differently on each car. Some were kept indoors, some outdoors, some got more sun exposure during filming. By the second season, the 6 cars were noticeably different shades of yellow. The continuity department tried everything. They'd touch up paint between takes. They'd try to film certain cars only in specific lighting conditions. They'd use filters and color correction in post-production. But if you watch carefully, you can see the color variations. Sometimes Nash's car is bright taxicab yellow. Sometimes it's more of a muted mustard. Sometimes it has an orange tint. Sometimes it looks almost green in certain light. This is why most TV shows use multiple identical cars painted at the same time with the same batch of paint. But Nash Bridges was working with cars painted at different times, possibly by different shops with hardware store paint that wasn't designed for automotive use. The paint jobs probably didn't even have proper clear coat. They were essentially spray painting these cars like lawn furniture and hoping for the best. Number 7. The interior changed constantly between cars. Watch Nash Bridges carefully and you'll notice something weird. The interior of the Cuda changes. Sometimes the seats are black, sometimes they're dark brown, sometimes the dashboard has wood grain, sometimes it doesn't. The steering wheel changes, the gear shifter changes, even the radio is different in different scenes. This is because each of the 6 cars had whatever interior it came with. The production didn't bother to standardize them. Too expensive and time consuming. They figured most viewers wouldn't notice or care, and they were mostly right. The average person watching on a 1990s television wouldn't spot these differences. But watch it now on a high-definition screen and it's obvious. Nash gets in the car with black seats, cut to a driving shot and they're brown. Cut to him getting out and they're black again. It's like the car has multiple personality disorder. The props department did try to add some consistent elements. Nash's sunglasses were always in the same spot. There were consistent fuzzy dice at times, but the fundamental interior components were all over the place. Must have been confusing for Don Johnson. Which car am I in today? What color is my dashboard supposed to be? Number 6. Real Hemi Cuda convertibles were too valuable to use. By the time Nash Bridges went into production in the mid-90s, real 1971, Hemi Cuda convertibles were already worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Using one for a TV show would have been insane. Insurance alone would have cost more than the entire vehicle budget. Remember, only 7 were ever made. 2 with manual transmissions. These weren't just rare cars, they were essentially irreplaceable pieces of automotive history. Wrecking one for a stunt would be like burning a Rembrandt for a movie about art theft. The producers probably looked into getting a real one, maybe for establishing shots or hero poses, but the owners wanted too much money just to rent them, and the insurance companies probably laughed them out of the office. So they did what Hollywood always does. They faked it, and honestly, it was the right call. Better to destroy replica Barracudas than real Cudas. The car enthusiast community would have rioted if they'd wrecked an actual Hemi convertible for a chase scene. Even using one for regular driving scenes would have been risky. These cars are temperamental. The real Hemi engines are notorious for overheating and mechanical issues. Imagine the production delays if Nash's car broke down every other episode. Number 5. The autographs are preserved in clear coat. One of the surviving Nash bridges. Cuda's has something unique. The autographs of Don Johnson and other cast members are permanently preserved under the clear coat. Someone had the brilliant idea to get the cast to sign the car during production, but instead of just leaving the signatures to fade, they were sealed under professional automotive clear coat during restoration. It's like a permanent certificate of authenticity. This car isn't just claiming to be from Nash Bridges, it has Don Johnson's actual signature built into the paint job. Cheech Marin signed it too. Other cast members added their names. It's basically a rolling yearbook from the show. The signatures are on the dashboard and other interior panels. Every time you get in the car, you're surrounded by the autographs of the people who made it famous. Try getting that kind of provenance on a regular classic car. The restoration shop that did the work said it was one of the most unusual requests they'd ever had, but it makes perfect sense. Those signatures are part of the car's story now. They're as important as any original equipment. Number 4. Camera mounts and wiring were left in place. When they restored the main picture car, the one that got the real Hemi engine, they made an interesting decision. They kept all the camera mounts and special wiring from the TV production. There are still attachment points where cameras were mounted for driving shots. The special heavy-duty wiring that powered the film equipment is still in place. There are even marks on the body where equipment was repeatedly attached and removed. Why keep all this stuff? Because it's part of what makes the car special. It's not trying to be a perfect 1971 Hemi Cuda. It's trying to be Nash's car from the TV show. Those camera mounts tell a story. This is where they attach the camera that filmed Don Johnson's close-ups. This is where the sound equipment was mounted. These scratches are from 4 seasons of television production. It's like archaeological evidence of the car's Hollywood career. Some collectors would have erased all of this, restored it to factory perfect condition, but that would have erased its history. The TV production damage and modifications are now more valuable than originality. It's a complete reversal of normal restoration philosophy. Number 3, the stunt cars were barely holding together. By the end of the series, the stunt cars were in rough shape. 4 seasons of chase scenes, jumps, and hard driving had taken their toll. One stunt coordinator later said they were basically held together with zip ties and hope. The frames were bent from all the jumps. The suspensions were shot. The engines were tired from constant abuse. Body panels were bondoed and repainted so many times they were more filler than metal, but they had to keep running. The show must go on. The mechanics would perform miracles between takes, welding cracked frames, swapping engines from one car to another, using parts from all 6 cars to keep at least 3 running at any given time. By season 4, they were cannibalizing the cars constantly. Need a transmission? Pull it from car number 4. Need a door panel? Car number 2 isn't filming today. It was like automotive battlefield surgery. The amazing thing is that it never showed on screen. The magic of television made these barely running wrecks look like pristine muscle cars. Fresh paint and careful camera angles hide a lot of sins. Viewers had no idea they were watching automotive zombies stumbling through their final episodes. Number 2. Don Johnson couldn't actually drive stick. Here's an embarrassing secret. Don Johnson, who played this expert driver with his manual transmission muscle car, couldn't actually drive stick when the show started. He had to learn during production. The first few episodes used a lot of clever editing and stunt doubles for any scene that showed shifting. Johnson would move the shifter while the car was stationary, then they'd cut to a stunt driver actually driving. He did eventually learn, but it took most of the first season. The producers hired a driving instructor to work with him between scenes. Imagine being that instructor. Your job is to teach Miami Vice's star how to drive a clutch without stalling on camera. By the later seasons, Johnson was competent enough to do simple driving scenes, but anything complicated still went to the stunt team. all those heel-toe downshifts and perfect launches, that wasn't Don Johnson. The funny thing is that 2 of the cars were automatics anyway. So half the time, Johnson's character was pretending to shift a car that was actually shifting itself. Method acting at its finest. Just grab that shifter and pretend you know what you're doing. Number 1, the show created a fake car that became more famous than real ones. This is the ultimate irony of Nash's Cuda. The show took fake cars with the wrong engines, wrong paint, and wrong parts, and turned them into something more iconic than the real thing. Ask the average person to picture a 1971 Hemi Cuda convertible. They're not thinking about the 7 authentic cars Plymouth actually built. They're thinking about Nash's yellow monster. They're thinking about Don Johnson and Cheech Marin cruising through San Francisco. The fake has become more real than reality. The Nash Bridges. Cuda defined what a Hemi Cuda convertible should look like for an entire generation. That Sherwin-Williams yellow is now more associated with the car than any factory color. The rubber bumper that shouldn't exist is part of the iconic look. Car shows now have special categories for Nash Bridges replica cars. People spend hundreds of thousands of dollars building perfect copies of the fake TV car. Not copies of the real Plymouth production cars, copies of the Hollywood fantasy. It's a complete inversion of automotive authenticity. The replica has become the template. The TV prop has become the ideal. Real Hemi Cuda owners now have to explain that their cars aren't Nash Bridges replicas. They're the actual real thing. But in popular culture, Nash's fake Cuda is more real than real. It exists in millions of memories, countless TV reruns, and endless YouTube clips. That's the power of Hollywood. They can take 6 fake cars and turn them into one legendary machine. And there you have it. 20 weird facts about Nash's supposedly pristine 1971 Hemi Cuda convertible that was actually 6 different fake cars held together by Hollywood magic and hardware store paint. Which fact surprised you the most? Was it the missing Hemi engines or Don Johnson not knowing how to drive stick? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into TV car history, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about your favorite shows and the secrets behind them. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Number 20. The year confusion. Mystery. Here's something that'll mess with your head right from the start. Everyone calls it a 1971 Nova SS. The film itself describes it that way. Movie databases list it that way. But here's the thing. It's not actually a 71. Multiple production sources and registration documents show it as a 1970 model that was modified to look like a 71. Some of the surviving cars are actually registered as 1970 Novas. So why the confusion? Well, the production team made specific modifications to blur the lines between model years. They wanted that perfect aggressive look, and apparently that meant creating a Frankenstein's monster of Nova parts from different years. The funny part is that most car enthusiasts watching the film never even noticed. They see that mean black machine and just accept it as a 71 because that's what everyone says it is. But dig into the paperwork, check the VIN numbers on the surviving cars, and you'll find 1970 models masquerading as something they're not. It's like the car itself is lying to you, which when you think about it is pretty appropriate for a vehicle driven by a psychopathic stuntman who uses it as a murder weapon. Even the car's identity is deceptive. Number 19. The convoy rubber duck connection. Okay, this one's absolutely bizarre. You've got this intimidating death machine with a skull and lightning bolts on the hood, and sitting right there on top of it all is a chrome rubber duck. Yes, seriously. A cute little rubber duck hood ornament on a car designed to kill people. But it's not random, this is Tarantino being Tarantino. That duck is a direct reference to the 1978 trucker film Convoy, where the main character's CB handle is rubber duck. It's such a weird juxtaposition. Here's this vehicle that's supposed to be terrifying, and there's this goofy little duck sitting on the hood like it wandered onto the wrong movie set. The duck survived multiple stunts too. Behind the scenes footage, you can see it bouncing around during chase scenes, somehow staying attached while the car is doing all kinds of insane maneuvers. Production crew members said they had to replace it a few times because it would occasionally fly off during particularly violent stunts, but they always made sure to put a new one back on. It became like a mascot for the car. Some crew members even started calling the Nova the Duck Mobile as a joke, which probably would have made stuntman Mike absolutely furious if he were real. Number 18. The bullet license plate Easter egg. The license plate on Mike's Nova reads JJZ109. Seems random, right? Wrong. This is another one of those details that most viewers miss completely, but it's actually a direct homage to one of cinema's most famous car chase scenes. That plate number is identical to the one on Steve McQueen's 1968 Ford Mustang GT in Bullitt. Tarantino didn't just randomly pick this detail. He's obsessed with classic car cinema, and Bullitt has one of the most iconic chase sequences ever filmed. By giving stuntman Mike's death machine the same plate number, he's connecting Death Proof to that legacy of automotive mayhem. But here's the weird part, the plate appears and disappears throughout the film depending on which stunt car they were using. Some of the Novas had the plate, some didn't, and in post-production, they had to digitally add it to certain shots to maintain continuity. There's even one scene where eagle-eyed viewers notice the plate changes mid-shot because they spliced together footage from two different cars. It's like the plate itself is playing hide-and-seek throughout the movie. The prop department made multiple versions of the plate too, including beaten-up ones for after-crash scenes, though most of those shots ended up getting cut from the final film. Number 17. The 350 small block reality. Everyone assumes a car this menacing must be packing some massive big block engine under the hood, right? Some 454 monster, or at least a 427? Nope. The Death Proof Nova actually ran a 350 cubic inch small block Chevy Fave 8. That's right, the same engine you'd find in countless suburban dads' weekend cruisers. But here's where it gets interesting. The production team heavily modified these engines for stunt work. They needed reliability over raw power. These cars were going to be crashed, rolled, jumped, and generally abused in ways that would destroy most engines. So they built these 350s to be virtually indestructible. They added heavy-duty cooling systems, reinforced internal components, and basically turned these modest engines into stunt-performing workhorses. The sound you hear in the movie? That aggressive growl that makes the Nova sound like it's powered by the souls of the damned? Most of that was added in post-production. The actual cars sounded much more mundane. Stunt drivers said they were actually pretty easy to drive, nothing like the wild beasts the film makes them appear to be. One driver described it as driving your uncle's old Chevy, just with better brakes and a roll cage. Number 16, the automatic transmission. Surprise. Here's something that'll blow muscle car purists' minds. That death-proof killing machine that stuntman Mike rose through the gears like a racing driver. It had an automatic transmission, specifically a TH350 automatic. No clutch, no stick shift, just a good old-fashioned slush box. Why would they do this to a muscle car? Simple. Stunt driving. When you're doing complex choreographed crashes and chase scenes, the last thing stunt drivers need to worry about is managing a clutch while trying to hit their marks perfectly. The automatic transmission let them focus on the precision driving required for the shots, but Tarantino wanted that visceral feeling of shifting gears, so they faked it. Kurt Russell would mime shifting while the sound department added gear change noises in post. There are even shots where you can see his hand on what looks like a manual shifter, but it's actually just a modified automatic selector made to look like a stick. The stunt team said this was one of their most closely guarded secrets during filming. They didn't want anyone to know the intimidating death machine was running an automatic because it would ruin the mystique. Even some of the crew members didn't know until they actually looked inside the stunt cars. Number 15, the 12-gallon safety fuel cell. One detail you'd never notice watching the film but was absolutely critical for the stunts was the fuel system. Every stunt Nova was equipped with a 12-gallon Jazzy fuel cell with special rollover valves. This wasn't your standard gas tank. This was serious racing technology designed to prevent fuel spillage during crashes and rollovers. The fuel cell was basically a tank within a tank with special foam inside to prevent the fuel from sloshing around during violent maneuvers. The rollover valves would automatically seal if the car flipped, preventing gasoline from spraying everywhere. This might seem like a minor detail, but it's literally what allowed them to do those insane stunts safely. Well, relatively safely. Without these fuel cells, every crash could have turned into a fireball. The cells were mounted in different positions depending on what stunt the car was prepped for. For the cannon roll car, they actually moved the fuel cell to a completely different location to change the car's center of gravity. They needed it to roll in a specific way, and that 12-gallon cell full of gas was heavy enough to affect the car's rotation. Safety coordinators said these fuel cells were non-negotiable. Every stunt car had to have one, no exceptions. Number 14, the air conditioning hole. Hack. There is genuinely one of the weirdest modifications made to any movie car ever. The production literally cut a hole through the engine bay into the dashboard so they could pump cold air directly onto Kurt Russell. Texas heat plus black car plus long shooting days equals one very uncomfortable actor. But they couldn't just install normal air conditioning because the cars needed to maintain their period-correct appearance and modern AC systems would be visible. So, the crew got creative. Really creative. They cut this hole through the firewall and rigged up a system where they could connect external cooling units between takes. When cameras rolled, they'd disconnect the hoses, but the cool air would keep flowing for a few minutes. Russell later said this was the only thing that made the car bearable to sit in during the Austin shoots. The temperature inside that black car in the Texas sun could hit 130 degrees. The hole is still visible in the surviving screen-used car if you know where to look. It's covered by a small plate that looks like it belongs there, but it absolutely doesn't. Former crew members say this modification was suggested by Russell himself after nearly passing out during an early rehearsal. The man might play tough guys, but he wasn't about to suffer heat stroke for a role. Number 13, the artificially aged and rusted body. That weathered, beaten look of Mike's Nova, every bit of rust, every ding, every imperfection was deliberately created and then preserved under clear coat. The cars started as relatively clean examples, and the art department went to town making them look like they'd been through hell. They used various acids and oxidizing agents to create real rust patterns, then immediately sealed them with clear coat to stop the rust from spreading. They wanted that specific look of a car that's been neglected but not completely falling apart. Some areas were actually sanded down to bare metal and then treated with chemicals to create instant rust. Other parts were beaten with hammers and chains to create authentic-looking damage. The clear coat preservation was crucial because filming took months and they needed the cars to look exactly the same throughout. Natural rust would have progressed and changed the appearance. The art department took hundreds of photos of each car from every angle to ensure continuity. If a new stunt car needed to be prepped, they had detailed guides showing exactly where every rust spot and dent should be. One artist spent 3 days just on the hood of one car, making sure the rust patterns around the skull graphic looked properly weathered. They even added fake bird droppings in specific spots that had to match between cars. Number 12, the hydraulic death door lock. Here's a detail so obscure that most people who worked on the film don't even know about it. One of the stunt Novas was equipped with a hydraulically operated lock on the driver's door that could be controlled remotely. Why would they need this? For specific shots where the door needed to be locked, or unlocked at precise moments without anyone visibly touching it. The mechanism was hidden inside the door panel and connected to a small hydraulic pump in the trunk. A crew member with a remote control could lock or unlock the door from up to 50 feet away. This was used in scenes where they needed the door to be definitely locked for story purposes, but also needed to be able to open it quickly for safety. The hydraulic system was nearly silent, just a small click that was easily covered by ambient noise or engine sounds. The remote control still exists with the car, though the hydraulic system hasn't been tested in years. The current owner of that particular Nova says they're afraid to try it because the whole system might seize up or leak hydraulic fluid all over the interior. It's one of those movie magic details that seems completely unnecessary until you need that one specific shot, and then it's the most important thing in the world. Number 11, the 7 Nova production fleet. Most people think there was one hero car and maybe a backup. The reality? 7 Novas were used in the production of Death Proof. 7. Each one built for specific purposes and stunts. You had the hero car for close-ups with the actors, the high-speed chase cars with reinforced everything, the cannon roll car that was literally built to be destroyed, the insert car for interior shots, and various backup and parts cars. Each Nova was in a different state of modification. Some had full roll cages that made normal entry and exit impossible. Others were mechanically stock but cosmetically perfect. The production team had a massive chart tracking which car was which and what it could and couldn't do. Only 2 of these 7 cars are believed to have survived intact. The others were either destroyed during filming or cannibalized for parts to keep the surviving cars running. The cannon roll car was obviously obliterated. Another was cut in half for specific shots and couldn't be rebuilt. One supposedly ended up in a junkyard in Mexico, though nobody's been able to confirm this. The 2 survivors are now in private collections, and their owners are very aware of what they have. These aren't just movie props, they're pieces of cinema history that happen to be drivable. Well, sort of drivable. One owner says his Nova pulls hard to the left and makes concerning noises above 40 miles per hour. Number 10, the infamous Prius nickname. In perhaps the most ironic nickname in automotive film history, one of the death-proof Novas was called the Prius by the stunt team. Yes, they named a gas-guzzling, death-dealing muscle car after Toyota's hybrid economy car. This particular Nova was specifically built for the cannon roll stunt, where it would be launched down a hill and destroyed in one spectacular take. The stunt team started calling it the Prius as a joke about how it was the environmentally friendly choice because it would only be used once and then recycled. The name stuck, and even official production documents refer to this car as the Prius. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Here's a car that probably got 8 miles per gallon on a good day, being named after a car famous for getting 50. But the stunt team had a dark sense of humor about destroying these beautiful machines. They knew the Prius was going to meet a violent end, so they figured it deserved a memorable name. When the Prius finally met its fate in that cannon roll, the stunt coordinator reportedly said, "Well, that's the worst gas mileage a Prius ever got." The wreckage of the Prius was so complete that almost nothing was salvageable. They tried to save the engine block as a memento, but even that was cracked beyond repair. Number 9. The full roll cage hidden interior. While the death-proof Nova looked stock from the outside, the interior of the stunt cars was anything but. Full roll cages were welded into every stunt vehicle, but they were hidden remarkably well for filming. The cages were painted matte black to minimize reflections and blend into the dark interior. The padding on the cage bars was specifically chosen to look like it could be factory equipment to the casual viewer. In wide shots, you'd never know these cars were basically race-ready safety capsules. The hero car used for dialogue scenes had a much more minimal cage, just enough for basic safety, but not so much that actors couldn't move around naturally. But the stunt cars? Those were different beasts entirely. Some had cages so extensive that you had to be a contortionist to get in and out. Stunt drivers had to practice entering and exiting the vehicles because it wasn't intuitive. There's footage of stunt drivers doing what looks like automotive yoga trying to slide through the cage bars. The cages added hundreds of pounds to each car, which affected handling and performance. Stunt drivers had to adjust their driving to account for the higher center of gravity and change weight distribution. One driver said it was like driving with 4 passengers you couldn't see, all shifting around unpredictably. Number 8. The plexiglass death barrier. One of the creepiest details of stuntman Mike's Nova is that plexiglass barrier between the driver's seat and the passenger area. This wasn't just set dressing, it was a fully functional barrier that had to be carefully engineered. The plexiglass had to be thick enough to look substantial, but clear enough for filming. It couldn't create unwanted reflections that would ruin shots. The production went through several versions before finding the right material and thickness. The barrier was actually removable for different shots. Sometimes they needed it crystal clear, sometimes they wanted it slightly scratched and foggy to suggest age and use. They had multiple versions ready to swap out. The mounting system was surprisingly complex. It had to be absolutely secure for stunt work, but also quick release for emergency situations. Safety coordinators insisted on being able to remove it in under 30 seconds if needed. There's a disturbing logic to the barrier that reflects Mike's character perfectly. It's death-proof for him, but it turns the passenger area into a killing chamber. The prop department added small details like scratches and what looked like impact marks on the passenger side, suggesting this wasn't the first time Mike had used his car for violence. Kurt Russell reportedly found sitting behind the barrier genuinely unsettling, saying it made him feel isolated and predatory, which was exactly the point. Number 7. The stripped and reinforced stunt interiors. While the hero car maintained a relatively stock interior for filming, the stunt cars were completely different animals inside. Everything non-essential was stripped out. No backseat, no sound deadening, no comfort features whatsoever. Just bare metal, racing seats, and safety equipment. The weight savings from stripping the interiors was significant, nearly 300 pounds in some cases. This made the cars more responsive and easier to control during complex stunts, but it also made them incredibly loud and uncomfortable. Stunt drivers wore helmets not just for safety, but also for hearing protection. The floors were reinforced with additional steel plating. The production was paranoid about something coming through the floor during stunts, especially after seeing what happened to similar cars in crash tests. The racing seats were custom mounted at different heights and angles depending on the driver. Each stunt driver had their preferred setup, and the team would adjust accordingly. It could take hours to reconfigure a car for a different driver. All the glass except the windshield was replaced with safety glass, or Lexan, in the stunt cars. Real glass was too dangerous for the kinds of impacts they were planning. The Lexan looked identical on camera but would flex, instead of shattering. Some stunt cars had additional cameras mounted internally, which meant even more modifications to hide the mounting points and cables while maintaining structural integrity. Number 6. The multiple hood skull graphics. That iconic skull and lightning bolt graphic on the hood, there wasn't just one. The production created dozens of them, each slightly different depending on the car and the scene requirements. Some were painted directly onto the hood, others were vinyl decals that could be quickly replaced if damaged. The hero car had the most detailed version, with subtle shading and weathering effects that looked incredible in close-ups but would be invisible in wide shots. The stunt cars had simplified versions that read better at speed. There were pre-damaged versions for continuity after crash scenes. Some had bullet holes, others had scratches and tears. The art department had to carefully track which version was on which car for which scene. They created what they called skull maps, showing every detail of each graphic, including intentional imperfections that had to match between shots. One artist spent a week just creating the master template for the skull, going through dozens of variations before Tarantino approved the final design. The lightning bolts were particularly tricky because they had to look spontaneous and hand-painted while actually being precisely measured to match between cars. There's even a story about one skull being painted backwards accidentally on a rush job, and nobody noticed until they were reviewing footage. They had to digitally flip it in post-production, and if you know which scene to look for, you can spot where the hood latches are on the wrong side. Number 5. The engine bay. Cooling modifications. Beyond the famous air conditioning hole, the engine bays of these Novas were extensively modified for cooling. Texas heat combined with intense stunt driving meant these engines needed serious help staying cool. The production installed oversized radiators, additional electric fans, and even external cooling systems that could be connected between takes. The cooling systems were so extensive that they actually had to reinforce the front chassis to support the weight. Some cars had 3 separate electric fans just for the radiator, plus additional fans for oil cooling and transmission cooling. During the hottest shooting days, they would pack the engine bays with dry ice between takes. You can actually see vapor coming from under the hood in some scenes, which they tried to hide but occasionally slips through in the final cut. The water pumps were upgraded to high-flow racing units. Stock pumps couldn't keep up with the demand, especially during extended idle scenes where the cars had to sit running for multiple takes. One memorable day, they went through 5 thermostats on a single car. The Texas heat combined with the demands of filming was literally cooking the cooling systems. The crew started carrying spare thermostats like most people carry spare tires. They even experimented with different coolant mixtures, trying to find the perfect blend that would handle the extreme conditions while still looking correct if it leaked on camera. Number 4. The cannon roll destruction engineering. The Prius, that sacrificial Nova, built specifically for the cannon roll stunt, was perhaps the most extensively modified car in the entire production. This wasn't just about making a car roll. It was about making it roll in a specific way that would look good on camera and be relatively safe for everyone involved. The car was completely rebalanced for the stunt. Weight was removed from one side and added to the other to encourage the roll. The suspension was modified to collapse at exactly the right moment. They even calculated the optimal speed and launch angle down to the decimal point. The car had special breakaway body panels designed to fly off dramatically during the roll. These panels were attached with specific fasteners that would release at predetermined stress points, creating that spectacular shower of debris you see in the film. Inside, everything was either removed or welded in place. They didn't want any loose objects becoming projectiles during the roll. Even the sun visors were removed because they could potentially block a camera angle. The stunt team did dozens of computer simulations before the actual roll, predicting exactly how the car would behave. They were accurate within inches of where the car would land. The actual stunt was performed in one take, obviously, since the car was completely destroyed. The stunt driver walked away without a scratch, testament to the extensive safety preparations. Number 3, the Austin sequence versus Tennessee switch. Here's something most viewers don't realize. Stuntman Mike's Nova only appears in the first half of Death Proof, the Austin sequence. After that, he switches to a completely different car for the Tennessee scenes. But the transition between cars tells a story about the character. The Nova represents Mike at his most confident, his most predatory. It's his killing machine, perfected over who knows how many victims. When he loses it and has to switch cars, it's like he's lost part of his identity. The production deliberately made the Nova more impressive than the Charger he drives later. The Nova was Mike in his element. The Charger was Mike scrambling to regain his power. Different stunt teams worked on each sequence, and they had very different approaches to filming the cars. The Nova scenes were shot with longer lenses to emphasize the car's menace and isolation. The Charger scenes used wider angles to show it in relation to the girl's car. Even the engine sounds were mixed differently. The Nova got deeper, more guttural treatment in post. The Charger sounded more desperate, more strained. It's subtle audio storytelling that most people feel but don't consciously notice. Tarantino supposedly had a whole backstory about how Mike acquired the Nova and why it was so special to him, but none of it made it into the film. The car's history remains a mystery. Number 2. The screen car versus crash car divide. The difference between the screen-used hero car and the crash cars was dramatic. While they looked identical on camera, they were completely different machines. The hero car retained most of its original interior, had a much quieter exhaust, and was generally pleasant to drive. Kurt Russell spent most of his time in this car, and it needed to be comfortable enough for long dialogue scenes. The crash cars were stripped down, caged-up monsters built for one purpose: controlled destruction. They were loud, uncomfortable, and barely street legal. Most couldn't even be driven to set. They had to be trailered. The production had specific rules about which cars could be used for what. The hero car was never allowed to exceed 30 miles per hour. If a scene required speed, they switched to a stunt car. Even seemingly simple scenes might require a car swap. There's one shot where Mike pulls up to a curb and they switched cars 3 times for that 20-second sequence. Hero car for the approach, stunt car for the actual curb contact, then back to hero car for Russell's exit. The insurance requirements for each car were different too. The hero car was insured for millions as a picture vehicle. The stunt cars were essentially considered disposable, insured only for basic liability. This created weird situations where the beaten-up looking stunt cars were worth less on paper than their pristine cousins, despite being far more extensively modified. Number 1. The surviving cars. Hidden production secrets. The 2 death-proof Novas that survived filming are rolling museums of movie-making secrets. They still carry evidence of their Hollywood past that most people would never notice. The screen-used hero car still has tape marks inside, showing where actors needed to position themselves for specific shots. There are tiny holes drilled in places for camera mounts that were later filled, but are still visible if you know where to look. One car has production numbers written in grease pencil under the hood that nobody's wanted to clean off. They're like archaeological evidence of the filming process. The date stamps show exactly when certain scenes were shot. There are brackets and mounting points for equipment that was removed, but the brackets remain. Some are for lights, some for cameras, others for safety equipment that was only used once. The cars still have their original production documentation tucked into various hiding spots. Crew members would stash paperwork, call sheets, and notes in the cars, and some of it's still there. One owner found a shooting schedule from August 2006 wedged behind a seat-mounting bracket. Perhaps most remarkably, one of the surviving cars still has what crew members called the death switch. This was an emergency fuel cutoff that could be triggered remotely if a stunt went wrong. The switch still works, though nobody's eager to test it extensively. These cars aren't just movie props, they're time capsules from one of the most unique films ever made, carrying secrets and stories in every modified bolt and hidden bracket. And there you have it. That's 20 weird facts about stuntman Mike's Nova that prove this car was just as much of a character as anyone in Death Proof. From rubber ducks to hydraulic locks, from the Prius to the death switch, this machine was engineering insanity wrapped in matte black menace. Which of these facts surprised you the most? And more importantly, would you want to take a ride in the real Death Proof Nova, knowing everything it's been through? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into movie car madness, smash that like button and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes automotive mysteries. Until next time, remember, when someone offers you a ride in a skull-decorated muscle car, maybe just call an Uber instead. Number 20, the year that never was. Here's something that'll mess with your head. That iconic 1977 Trans Am from Smokey and the Bandit. It wasn't actually a 1977 model. The primary stunt cars were 1976 Trans Ams dressed up to look like the newer model. Think about that for a second. One of the most famous 77 cars in movie history was actually a 76 in disguise. The production team took 1976 bodies and modified them with updated front ends to match the upcoming 1977 style. They swapped out the round headlights for 4 rectangular ones, added the new grille design, changed the nose piece. It was automotive sleight of hand on a massive scale. Why go through all this trouble? Simple timing. When filming began, the actual 1977 models weren't available yet, but the movie needed that cutting-edge look, so they faked it. And here's the kicker. It worked so well that even today, most people have no idea they're looking at modified 76 models. The movie credits say 1977. Every poster shows a 77. But those cars sliding around corners and jumping ravines, pure 1976 underneath all that makeup. Number 19, the Frankenstein front end. Let's talk about that front end transformation. This wasn't just slapping on a new bumper and calling it a day. The production team basically performed reconstructive surgery on these cars. They took 1976 Trans Am bodies and grafted on completely different front clips. The 4 rectangular headlights that became so iconic. Those were the signature of the 77 model. The earlier 76s had round headlights. Completely different look. The nose piece, the grille, the entire lighting assembly. All of it was assembled from parts to create an illusion. It's like putting a modern smartphone screen on a flip phone and hoping nobody notices the difference. Except they pulled it off perfectly. The really wild part is how seamless they made it look. Watch the movie today and you'd never guess you're looking at a part spin special. Every angle, every shot makes it look like a factory, fresh 77 Trans Am. But underneath that Hollywood magic was good old-fashioned part swapping. They were creating the future using pieces of the past. And the craziest detail? Some of these modifications were so convincing that they influenced how people remember the actual 77 models. The movie version became more real than reality itself. Number 18, the hood scoop lie. That aggressive TA 6.6 liter decal on the hood scoop, it's telling you a story that might not be true. The decal proudly advertised a 6.6 liter engine that's 400 cubic inches of American muscle. Sounds impressive, right? Here's where it gets interesting. Many of the actual stunt cars didn't have what you'd expect under the hood. The decal was more of a suggestion than a promise. Some cars had different engines entirely. The movie cars were a mixed bag of power plants, each chosen for specific stunts or scenes. One might have the advertised engine, another might have something completely different. It was all about what worked for that particular shot. The production didn't care about matching numbers or factory specs, they cared about getting the shot. And those bold graphics on the hood, they were selling an image, not documenting reality. The 6.6 badge became part of the car's character. It didn't matter what was actually churning away under that shaker hood. What mattered was that audiences believed they were watching 400 cubic inches of raw power tear up the South. Sometimes the best automotive facts are the ones that aren't quite facts at all. Number 17, the horsepower reality check. Brace yourself for this one. That fire-breathing Trans Am that outran every cop car in 3 states, it had about 200 horsepower. 200, not 400, not 300, 200. That's less than a modern Honda Accord. The late 70s were the dark ages of American muscle cars. Emission controls had strangled engine output. Insurance companies had declared war on performance. And the mighty Trans Am, despite all its aggressive styling and hood scoops and screaming chicken decals, was putting out numbers that would embarrass a modern minivan. But watching the movie, you'd think that car had 500 horsepower. It's jumping bridges, it's smoking tires through every turn. It's leaving police cruisers in the dust like they're standing still. The reality? Movie magic and clever editing. The stock 1977 Trans Am with its emissions-choked 400 cubic inch engine was quick for its era. But it wasn't the rocket ship the film made it appear to be. Those incredible stunts. They required special modifications, camera tricks, and sometimes just pure momentum. The car's actual performance was so modest that some of the chase scenes had to be filmed at lower speeds and then sped up in editing. Hollywood turned a neutered 70s muscle car into a legend through pure storytelling genius. Number 16. The 4-car shell game. Think you're watching the same Trans Am throughout the movie? Think again. At least 4 different Trans Ams played the role of the Bandit's ride. Each one had a specific job. There was the hero car for close-ups and beauty shots, the stunt cars for the dangerous stuff, and the sacrifice cars that were meant to be destroyed. It's like having 4 actors play the same character, each specializing in different scenes. The production team would swap them out depending on what they needed. Need a perfect shot of Burt Reynolds behind the wheel, bring in the pristine hero car, time for a massive jump. Roll out the reinforced stunt special, about to crash through a billboard. That's a job for one of the expendable cars. But here's what's really clever. They made all 4 cars look identical on camera. Same paint, same decals, same wheels, same interior. The continuity was so good that even eagle-eyed viewers couldn't spot the switches. Each car was modified for its specific role. The stunt cars had reinforced frames and special suspensions. The hero car was kept immaculate for those glamour shots. And the destruction cars? Well, they were basically rolling sacrifices to the movie gods. 4 cars playing one role, and nobody in the audience was any the wiser. Number 15. The rocket-powered secret. That legendary bridge jump over the Mulberry Bridge. The one where the Trans Am soars through the air like it has wings. There's more to that stunt than raw horsepower and a brave stunt driver. Some sources report the car had a little extra help. We're talking about rocket assistance, or at least some kind of special launching mechanism. The standard Trans Am, even with a perfect run-up, couldn't achieve the kind of flight time you see in the movie. Physics just doesn't work that way. So, the stunt team got creative. Really creative. One version of the story says they fitted rocket boosters to give the car extra thrust. Another claims they used a special ramp system that provided more lift than appeared on camera. Whatever the exact method, that car got some serious assistance going airborne. The jump was so violent and the landing so hard that the car was essentially destroyed. The frame bent. The suspension collapsed. Every major component was damaged. But for those few seconds of screen time, that Trans Am flew like nothing else on 4 wheels. It's the kind of stunt that would never be done with a real car today. Too dangerous, too expensive, too insane. But in 1977, they just strapped some extra power to a muscle car and sent it flying. Number 14. The production graveyard. Here's a sobering fact: by the time filming wrapped on Smokey and the Bandit, not a single one of the 4 main Trans Ams was still functional. Every single one was destroyed. These weren't minor dings and scratches we're talking about. These cars were obliterated. The constant high-speed chases, jumps, and crashes had reduced them to scrap metal on wheels. One car was so badly damaged it had to be pushed into position for the final scene. Think about that. The triumphant ending where the Bandit rides off into the sunset. That car couldn't even move under its own power. They literally had to push it into frame and film around its complete mechanical failure. Another car's frame was so bent from jumping that it looked like a banana. The doors wouldn't close properly. The wheels pointed in different directions. The engine mounts were torn loose. It was basically modern art at that point. The production went through Trans Ams like tissues during cold season. They'd use them up, destroy them, and move on to the next one. By the end, they had a parking lot full of automotive casualties. 4 Trans Ams entered the production. 0 survived intact. That's a 100% casualty rate. Even war movies don't usually kill off their entire cast of cars. Number 13. The paint scheme. Psychology. That black and gold color combination wasn't random. It was carefully chosen to make the car pop on screen like nothing else on the road. The production team tested different color combinations. They looked at how each one appeared on film, how it caught the light, how it stood out against different backgrounds. Black and gold won for several reasons. First, it looked menacing. That black paint made the car look like it was carved from shadow. Second, the gold accents caught the light perfectly. Every curve, every detail was highlighted by those golden touches. Third, it photographed beautifully. Film stock in the 70s had specific characteristics, and this color combo worked perfectly with the technology of the time. But there was psychology at play too. Black suggested danger, rebellion, and power. Gold added a touch of class and value. Together they created an image of an outlaw with style, a rebel who did things with flair. The color scheme became so iconic that Pontiac later offered it as a special edition package. Dealers called it the Bandit Edition, and they sold like crazy. People wanted to own that exact combination of colors. They wanted to capture that same rebellious spirit, all because someone in the art department understood how color affects emotion and how emotion sells movie tickets. Number 12. The free car deal. Pontiac basically gave away those Trans Ams to the production. Free cars in exchange for what became the greatest automotive advertisement ever filmed. This wasn't product placement as we know it today, this was a gamble. A huge gamble. Pontiac had no idea the movie would become a phenomenon. They just knew a film featuring their car might help sales. So they made a deal. The production got their cars for essentially nothing. Pontiac got their car featured as the hero vehicle. It seemed like a fair trade at the time. Nobody could have predicted what happened next. The movie exploded into a cultural phenomenon. Suddenly, everyone wanted a black and gold Trans Am. Dealers couldn't keep them in stock. Pontiac's sales numbers went through the roof. They'd spent basically nothing and gotten millions of dollars worth of advertising in return. The Trans Am became the car of 1977 and 78, not because of any magazine ad or TV commercial, but because audiences watched it outrun the law for 96 minutes. Pontiac's gamble paid off so well that it changed how Hollywood and car companies work together. Every car chase movie since has tried to recreate that magic, but none have matched the perfect storm of the right car, the right movie, and the right moment in time. Number 11. The sales explosion. Let's talk numbers, real numbers. Before Smokey and the Bandit, Trans Am sales were decent but not spectacular. After the movie, they went absolutely insane. In 1976, before the film, Pontiac sold about 46,000 Trans Ams. Not bad. Respectable numbers for a specialty performance car. Then the movie hit theaters in May of 1977. By the end of that year, sales had jumped to 68,000 units. The next year, 93,000 Trans Ams rolled off the lots. The year after that, 117,000. The movie had literally tripled Trans Am sales in just 3 years. Dealers reported customers walking in and asking for the Bandit car by name. They didn't want just any Trans Am. They wanted the black one with the gold bird on the hood, the one from the movie. Some dealers started creating their own Bandit editions before Pontiac made it official. They'd take regular Trans Ams and add the black paint and gold accents. Customers would pay premium prices for these conversions. The movie had turned a car into a character, and everyone wanted to own that character. It's one of the most successful examples of a movie selling cars in automotive history, all because Burt Reynolds looked cool jumping a bridge. Number 10. The honeycomb heritage. Those distinctive honeycomb wheels spinning on the Bandit's Trans Am, they weren't originally designed for that car. They came from the 1976 50th Anniversary Edition Trans Am. Another piece of the puzzle showing how these cars were cobbled together from different years and models. The honeycomb wheels were special. Pontiac created them to celebrate 50 years of building cars. They were supposed to be exclusive to that anniversary model, limited, special, collectible. Then, the movie production needed wheels that looked futuristic and aggressive. The honeycomb design was perfect, so they grabbed them from the anniversary edition and slapped them on their Frankenstein Trans Ams. The funny part is, these wheels became more associated with the Bandit car than with the anniversary edition they were designed for. Ask any car enthusiast about honeycomb wheels and they'll immediately think of Smokey and the Bandit. The original anniversary edition, largely forgotten. It's like stealing someone's signature move and becoming more famous for it than they ever were. The wheels just looked right on that black and gold paint scheme. They caught the light. They suggested speed even when standing still. And they became another piece of the visual puzzle that made the Bandit Trans Am so memorable. Sometimes the best design choices are the ones you borrow from somewhere else. Number 9. The Screaming Chicken Legacy. That massive golden Firebird spreading its wings across the hood became known as the Screaming Chicken, and it might be the most famous hood decal in automotive history. The design wasn't new. Pontiac had been using Firebird imagery for years, but the movie turned it into an icon. The way that gold paint caught the light during chase scenes, the way it seemed to come alive when the car was in motion. Suddenly that bird wasn't just a decal, it was a statement. After the movie, everyone wanted the big bird, not the small, subtle Firebird emblems. The huge, in-your-face, hood-dominating Screaming Chicken. It became the symbol of American muscle car excess. Bigger, louder, more aggressive. The Screaming Chicken spawned an entire industry. T-shirts, posters, belt buckles, tattoos. People who had never owned a Trans Am were wearing Screaming Chicken merchandise. It transcended the car and became its own cultural phenomenon. Even today, decades later, you can buy Screaming Chicken decals for any car. People put them on Honda Civics, on pickup trucks, on riding mowers, because that golden bird still means something. It means rebellion. It means speed. It means you've got taste in classic movie cars. All because a prop department decided to go with the biggest, boldest version of Pontiac's Firebird logo they could find. Number 8. The CB radio connection. The Trans Am's interior was modified to embrace CB radio culture. This wasn't just a random choice, it tied directly into the movie's trucker outlaw theme. CB radios were having a moment in the 70s. Truckers used them, outlaws used them. Regular people bought them to feel like they were part of something rebellious. The Bandit's Trans Am had to be part of that world. So they integrated CB equipment into the car's interior, not just as a prop, but as a central part of the car's character. The car became a mobile communications center. The Bandit could talk to the snowman. He could listen to police chatter. He could be part of that underground network of road rebels. The The CB radio turned the car into more than transportation. It made it a tool of rebellion, a way to stay one step ahead of the law. The interior modifications were subtle, but important. The microphone within easy reach. The radio itself prominently displayed. Even the antenna was positioned to look aggressive and functional. This wasn't just product placement. It was character development through automotive accessories. The CB radio said this car belongs to someone who lives outside normal society. Someone who has their own rules and their own network. The Trans Am wasn't just fast, it was connected, and in 1977, that was just as cool as horsepower. Number 7. The survival myth. Here's something that'll break collectors' hearts. None of the actual stunt cars from the movie survived intact. Zero, nada, nothing. Sure, people claim to own the original Bandit Trans Am. Auction houses occasionally sell cars advertised as screen-used vehicles, but the truth? The real stunt cars were destroyed during filming. What exists today are promotional cars. Tribute builds, cars given to cast members that weren't used in the actual stunts. Burt Reynolds received a Trans Am after filming. That car, which wasn't beaten to death during production, sold at auction for nearly $500,000. But it wasn't one of the cars that jumped bridges or slid around corners. Those cars were gone. The mythology around surviving movie cars is powerful. People want to believe they can own a piece of cinema history, and sometimes sellers are happy to let them believe. A Trans Am that was on set but never used in filming becomes the car from the movie. A promotional vehicle sent to a dealer becomes a screen-used hero car. The real hero cars? They gave their lives for our entertainment. They're not sitting in climate-controlled garages. They were crushed, scrapped, and recycled decades ago. Their sacrifice made the movie legendary. But it also means the actual stars of the show are gone forever. Number 6. The engine swap mysteries. Not all the Trans Ams in the movie had Trans Am engines. The production team swapped power plants based on what each car needed to do. For the high-speed scenes, they wanted reliable power. For the jump stunts, they needed something that could handle the punishment. For the beauty shots, it didn't matter what was under the hood as long as the car looked good. Some cars reportedly had completely different engines installed, not just different versions of the Pontiac motor, but entirely different power plants. The bridge jump car allegedly had a specially built motor and transmission designed to survive the impact. Regular Trans Am components would have shattered on landing. One stunt driver claimed his car had a modified engine with different internals for better durability during the chase scenes. Stock engines couldn't handle hours of full throttle abuse. The production team treated engines like stunt doubles. They'd use whatever worked best for each scene. Continuity? That's what movie magic is for. Nobody in the audience could hear the difference between a 400 and a 455. They just heard American V8 thunder. And as long as it sounded powerful and looked fast on screen, mission accomplished. The engine didn't need to match the hood decal. It just needed to survive until the director yelled cut. Number 5. The final scene. Disaster. Remember that triumphant final scene where the Bandit drives off to his next adventure? The car in that shot was basically dead. It had to be pushed into position by the crew. The engine wouldn't start. The transmission was gone. The suspension was so damaged the car sat at weird angles, but they needed that final shot, so they got creative. Really creative. They positioned the camera to hide the damage. They pushed the car into frame when the cameras weren't rolling. They might have even used some clever editing to make it look like the car was moving under its own power. Think about the irony. The movie ends with the Bandit racing off to another adventure, but in reality that Trans Am's adventure was over. It couldn't even limp to the parking lot. The car that had spent 90 minutes outrunning the law couldn't outrun its own mortality. It's actually kind of poetic. The car gave everything it had for the movie. It literally ran itself to death, entertaining audiences, and its final act was pretending to be ready for more adventures when it was actually ready for the scrapyard. That's dedication to the craft. Even in its death throes, that Trans Am was still selling the illusion of power and rebellion. Number 4. The model year deception. The deception about the car's model year goes deeper than just badge engineering. The entire identity of these cars was fabricated. Registration documents, if they existed, would have shown 1976 models, but every piece of movie marketing claimed 1977. The hood scoops, the spoilers, even some interior pieces were mix and match combinations from different years. The production created automotive chimeras that never existed in any Pontiac factory. They were building their own version of what a 1977 Trans Am should look like, and their version became more real than reality. Even Pontiac seemed to embrace the confusion. When Trans Am sales exploded after the movie, they didn't correct anyone who called it a 77. Why would they? The myth was selling cars. The really bizarre part is that these fake 77s influenced the design of real 78s and 79s. Customers wanted their Trans Ams to look like the movie car, so Pontiac made them look like the movie car, which was actually a modified 76 pretending to be a 77. It's a perfect example of fiction becoming fact. The movie's fantasy Trans Am became the template for real Trans Ams, reality bent to match what Hollywood had created in a Georgia parking lot with spare parts and imagination. Number 3. The Cultural Revolution. The Bandit's Trans Am didn't just sell cars, it changed American culture. Before the movie, muscle cars were fading. Insurance was killing them. Gas prices were rising. The government was imposing stricter emission standards. Performance cars seemed doomed. Then this movie showed up and reminded everyone why they loved fast cars in the first place. It wasn't about the numbers. It wasn't about quarter-mile times. It was about freedom, rebellion, the open road. The Trans Am became a symbol of resistance against the boring, sensible, economy-focused automotive future everyone predicted. Suddenly, wanting an impractical, gas-guzzling muscle car wasn't stupid. It was patriotic, it was rebellious, it was cool again. The movie sparked a mini renaissance for performance cars. Other manufacturers scrambled to create their own Bandit-style special editions. The Dodge Warlock, the Ford Cobra II. Everyone wanted to capture that outlaw magic, but more than that, it changed how Americans thought about cars in movies. Before Smokey and the Bandit, cars were usually just props. After, they could be characters. They could be stars. The Trans Am proved a car could carry a movie just as much as any actor. It paved the way for Knight Rider, the Dukes of Hazzard, and eventually the Fast and the Furious franchise. All because a black and gold Pontiac made being an outlaw look like so much fun. Number 2. The technical impossibility. Let's talk about the physics of what you see on screen. Most of those stunts, technically impossible with a stock Trans Am. That bridge jump would have required the car to be traveling at speeds the Trans Am couldn't achieve on that run-up. The landings from those jumps should have destroyed the car instantly. Not damaged, destroyed. The sliding turns through city streets would have flipped a real Trans Am with its high center of gravity and soft suspension. The movie breaks the laws of physics approximately every 3 minutes. But here's the genius part. They made it look believable. Through camera angles, editing, and practical effects, they sold impossible stunts as merely improbable. They turned a 200 horsepower smog-era muscle car into something that seemed capable of anything. The stunt team used every trick in the book. Ramps hidden just out of frame, cars sliding on wet pavement to reduce friction, scenes filmed at different speeds and edited together. They even used different cars for different parts of the same stunt. One car might do the approach, another does the jump, a third does the landing. Edit them together and you've got one impossible stunt that looks absolutely possible. The Trans Am in the movie exists in a universe where physics works differently, where cars can fly further, land harder, and corner faster than reality allows. And we loved every impossible second of it. Number 1, the corporate confusion. Here's the ultimate irony. The car that saved Pontiac's Trans Am division wasn't even a real Pontiac product. It was a Hollywood's creation that Pontiac had almost nothing to do with. Pontiac provided some cars and basic support. That's it. They didn't design the modifications, they didn't plan the color scheme, they didn't create the character. Hollywood did all that. And then Pontiac had to scramble to catch up with their own success. Dealers were getting requests for Bandit editions before Pontiac even knew what a Bandit edition should be. The factory was getting orders for features that didn't exist because people had seen them in the movie. The tail was wagging the dog, a movie prop had become more influential than the actual manufacturer. Pontiac eventually created official Bandit editions, but they were following Hollywood's lead, not the other way around. They were copying a copy of their own car. The 1976 Trans Ams, pretending to be 77s, had become the template for real 78s and 79s. Engineers at Pontiac were literally watching the movie to figure out what customers wanted. The normal relationship between manufacturer and media had been completely reversed. Usually car companies tell filmmakers what's possible. This time, filmmakers told a car company what their own car should be. And the craziest part? It worked. The Hollywood version of the Trans Am became more successful than anything Pontiac could have designed themselves. And there you have it. 20 absolutely wild facts about the Bandit's Trans Am that prove sometimes the best stories are the ones hiding under the hood. Those beat-up 76 models dressed as 77s didn't just outrun Sheriff Buford T. Justice, they outran reality itself and became more legendary than the truth ever could be. Did any of these facts surprise you? Drop a comment below and let us know which one blew your mind the most. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of cinema's most iconic cars, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We've got plenty more automotive mysteries and Hollywood secrets coming your way. Until next time, keep that hammer down and watch out for Smokies. Number 20. The Marvel connection nobody talks about. Here's something most Maximum Overdrive fans don't know. That terrifying green face on the truck, it's not just inspired by the Green Goblin, it's officially licensed. The film credits explicitly state the Green Goblin likeness is used with permission from Marvel Comics. Think about that. Marvel actually looked at this script about killer trucks and said, sure, put our villain's face on a murderous semi. This was 1986, long before Marvel was the entertainment juggernaut it is today. They were licensing Spider-Man's nemesis to a Stephen King horror movie about machines coming to life and killing people. The legal paperwork alone must have been fascinating. Imagine the meeting where someone had to explain this concept to Marvel executives. So we want to put the Green Goblin's face on a truck. Okay, for a toy line? No, for a movie where it murders people. And you'll pay us how much? The fact that Marvel approved this tells you everything about the Wild West days of 80s licensing. Today, Marvel controls every pixel of their characters' appearances. Back then, slap it on a killer truck? Why not? The mask itself was a massive fiberglass sculpture, custom made for the film. It wasn't some cheap Halloween decoration they found at a store. This was a professionally crafted, officially licensed Marvel villain face designed specifically to turn a truck into a nightmare. And somehow, everyone involved thought this was a perfectly reasonable creative decision. Number 19. The truck that nobody can agree sign near. You'd think identifying a truck would be simple. It has a VIN number. It has documentation. It exists in the real world. But no. The Green Goblin truck has sparked more debate than almost any other movie vehicle. Here's the confusion. Many sources claim it's a 1977 truck. The movie came out in '86, so that would make sense. Old enough to look menacing, new enough to still run. But vehicle identification experts who've studied the film footage say it's actually a mid-1970s white Western Star 4800, probably circa 1976, not 77. Then other fans insist. It's a 1981 Western Star. That's a 5-year spread of confusion. How does this even happen? Well, the truck was heavily modified for the film. Parts were changed. Details were obscured by that massive Goblin mask. The production team probably grabbed whatever truck they could find that looked intimidating and didn't worry too much about the exact model year. But for truck enthusiasts and movie prop collectors, this drives them crazy. Forum threads go on for pages arguing about grille patterns and cab designs. People zoom in on blurry film stills trying to identify specific bolts and panels. It's like a vehicular conspiracy theory. The truth is probably lost to time. Unless someone finds the original production documents or the actual title for the truck, we may never know for sure. And honestly, Stephen King probably doesn't care. He just wanted a big, scary truck. Mission accomplished. Number 18. The cooling system. Nightmare. That massive Green Goblin mask looked terrifying on screen, but for the actual truck, it was mechanical torture. See, trucks need airflow to their radiators to stay cool. It's kind of important. Blocking a truck's grill is like putting a plastic bag over your head. Not recommended. According to forum posts from people involved with the production, the truck overheated constantly during filming. Think about that. They're trying to film chase scenes in North Carolina heat, and the truck keeps dying because it can't breathe. The mask significantly blocked the radiator's cooling airflow. Every take had to be carefully timed. They couldn't run the truck for long periods. Imagine being the mechanic on set. The truck's overheating again. Can we remove the mask? That's literally the whole point of the truck. Then we wait for it to cool down. This is the kind of production nightmare that nobody thinks about when designing movie vehicles. Sure, it looks cool, but can it actually function? In this case, barely. They probably had cooling fans, ice packs, and every trick in the book to keep that engine from seizing. The irony is perfect. In the movie, the machines rebel against humans. In reality, the truck was rebelling against its own costume. It's like method acting for vehicles. The Green Goblin truck was literally dying for its art. Every scene where you see it rolling menacingly down the road, there's probably a temperature gauge redlining just off camera. Number 17. the Happy Toys company that never was. Look closely at the trailer the Green Goblin truck pulls, and you'll see something deeply unsettling. The fictional company name Happy Toys painted on the side, complete with a creepy clown face. This wasn't random. This was deliberate psychological warfare by the production designers. Think about the juxtaposition. A toy company truck with a demonic goblin face, hauling toys while murdering people. It's the corruption of innocence turned up to 11. Stephen King understood that the scariest things take something safe and familiar and twist it into something wrong. Ice cream trucks playing music while stalking children. Clowns with sharp teeth. And here, a toy delivery truck that delivers death instead. The Happy Toys branding adds another layer of irony to the film's premise. In Maximum Overdrive, machines turn against humanity, but toys are supposed to bring joy to children. They're symbols of innocence and play. Having this murderous truck branded as a toy hauler is King's way of saying nothing is safe, nothing is innocent, even your child's toys want you dead. The clown face on the trailer is its own nightmare. Not quite as prominent as the Goblin mask, but if you notice it, it stays with you. Two faces of horror, one vehicle. The production designers knew exactly what they were doing. They were creating a rolling contradiction, a children's toy truck that's actually a killing machine, and that contradiction makes it even more disturbing. Number 16, Stephen King's one and only directing credit. Here's a fact that explains a lot about this movie. Maximum Overdrive was written and directed by Stephen King himself. His first time directing, his last time directing, his only time directing. And he gave us a truck with a goblin face. When asked about the experience later, King was honest. He admitted he was coked out of his mind for most of the production. His exact words, "This was the 80s, folks. Different times." But it explains so much. The decision to put a Green Goblin mask on a truck, cocaine decision, the Happy Toys branding, cocaine decision, having the truck's eyes glow, you get the picture. King has said he barely remembers making the movie, which is probably for the best. Imagine waking up from a bender and someone shows you footage of a semi-truck with a goblin face. I directed this? Yes. And Marvel signed off on it? Apparently. The film was critically panned. Roger Ebert gave it 1 star, but here's the thing. It became a cult classic specifically because of how insane it is, and the Green Goblin truck is the perfect symbol of that insanity. King never directed again. He stuck to writing, where his imagination could run wild without budget constraints or overheating trucks. But for one brief chemically enhanced moment in the 80s, he gave us this magnificent monstrosity, and horror fans are forever grateful. Number 15, the glowing eyes. That may or may not have worked. Multiple sources mention that the Green Goblin mask's eyes glowed in the film, or at least they were supposed to. This is another one of those production details that gets murky with time. Some say the eyes had actual lights installed. Others say it was a film effect. Watching the movie, there are definitely scenes where the eyes appear to have an illuminated quality, but whether that's practical effects, lighting tricks, or post-production work is debated. The idea of glowing eyes makes perfect sense for the character. Demonic vehicles need demonic eyes. It's horror movie 101, but implementing it on a moving truck in 1986, that's another story. If they did install actual lights, imagine the wiring nightmare. You've got a massive mask mounted on a truck that's already overheating. Now add electrical components exposed to weather and vibration, what could go wrong? The props department probably had nightmares about keeping those eyes lit. Every bump in the road risking a short circuit, every rainstorm threatening the electronics. And remember, this is a truck that's doing stunts. It's ramming cars. It's chase scenes. It's not gently cruising down a highway. Those theoretical eye lights would have taken a beating. Whether the eyes truly glowed or not, the effect worked. People remember them as glowing. The image burned into their memories. Sometimes the suggestion of an effect is more powerful than the effect itself. Number 14, the rocket-powered destruction. The Green Goblin truck meets its end in spectacular fashion. It gets destroyed by a rocket, not a small explosion, not a crash, a rocket. Because when you're Stephen King directing your only movie while admittedly out of your mind, you don't do things halfway. The destruction scene is notable for several reasons. First, they actually had to destroy the truck, or at least make it look destroyed. This wasn't CGI, this was practical effects, real explosions, real damage. Second, the Goblin mask reportedly had pieces blown off or removed during the sequence, specifically one of the heads, because apparently there might have been multiple masks or backup pieces. The details are fuzzy like everything else about this production. The rocket attack serves as the climax of the truck's reign of terror. It's been chasing our heroes, crushing cars, acting as the mechanical face of the machine uprising, and it takes military-grade weaponry to stop it. That's quite an escalation from your typical truck stop. The irony is that after surviving all that on-screen destruction, the real truck would face a different kind of decay. But we'll get to that. For now, just appreciate that someone decided the only way to kill a Green Goblin truck was with a rocket launcher, and someone else approved that decision, and they filmed it. The 80s were wild. Number 13, the salvage yard. Years. After the cameras stopped rolling and the crew went home, the Green Goblin truck didn't ride off into the sunset. It ended up in a salvage yard in Wilmington, North Carolina. Not a museum, not a private collection, a salvage yard. This magnificent monster of cinema, this officially licensed Marvel-faced killer truck, was left to rot among abandoned cars and scrap metal. The mask suffered major damage, the jaw was messed up, teeth were missing or broken, the tongue was damaged. Major burn marks scarred the surface. Whether this was from the film's explosive finale or subsequent neglect is unclear, probably both. Imagine walking through that salvage yard in the late 80s not knowing what you're looking at. Just another wrecked truck with some weird decoration on the front. You'd have no idea you were standing next to a piece of horror movie history. A vehicle that Stephen King himself directed. A truck that Marvel Comics authorized to wear their villain's face. This is the fate of many movie vehicles. Once filming wraps, they're just expensive junk taking up space, unless someone recognizes their value and rescues them, which fortunately is exactly what happened. But for years, the Green Goblin truck sat forgotten, rusting, deteriorating, its glowing eyes dark, its murderous days behind it. A sad end for such an iconic villain. Number 12, Tim Shockey's 20-year yard ornament. In 1987, a collector named Tim Shockey from Piketon, Ohio, did what any reasonable person would do. He bought a burned, damaged semi-truck with a giant goblin face and parked it in his yard. For 20 years. Not in a garage, not in a warehouse, in his yard. Think about being Tim's neighbor. Hey Tim, what's with the demon truck? Oh, that? It's from a Stephen King movie. Cool. How long are you keeping it? Couple decades, probably. For 20 years, this piece of cinema history sat in an Ohio yard, through winters and summers, snow and rain. While the rest of the world moved on, forgot about maximum overdrive, developed the internet, Tim Shockey had a Green Goblin truck in his yard. He didn't immediately restore it. He didn't tour it around conventions. He just had it. Like a really intense lawn ornament. A conversation starter from hell. Nice garden gnome. Thanks, check out my killer truck. Finally, in 2011, Shockey began restoration work, 24 years after buying it. That's patience. Or procrastination. Maybe both. But the important thing is he saved it. Without collectors like Shockey, these pieces of film history would be crushed into cube scrap metal. Instead, the Green Goblin truck survived. Damaged, weathered, but intact. Waiting for its second act. Number 11. The restoration controversy. When Tim Shockey finally began restoring the Green Goblin truck in 2011, you'd think horror fans would be thrilled. The iconic vehicle was being saved, preserved for future generations. Except, restoration is controversial. Here's the dilemma. Do you restore it to how it looked during filming, how it looked after filming, how it was supposed to look, or how you think it should look? Every choice changes history. The mask had damage from the film and from decades of decay. Do you fix all of it, some of it, leave it as is? If you repair the jaw, are you erasing part of its story? If you don't, are you letting it deteriorate further? These are the questions that keep preservationists up at night. Some fans wanted it restored to pristine, terrifying glory. Others wanted the battle scars preserved. It's like the debate over cleaning the Sistine Chapel. Except instead of Michelangelo, it's a cocaine-fueled Stephen King. And instead of religious imagery, it's a goblin-faced death machine. The restoration also raised questions about authenticity. If you replace damaged parts, is it still the original truck? Ship of Theseus paradox, but with more horror and diesel exhaust. Shockey had to make choices. Every restoration does. And no matter what you choose, someone will say you're destroying history. But the alternative was letting it rot completely. So he did what he thought best, and the Green Goblin truck lives on. Changed, perhaps, but still terrifying. Number 10. The cult following. That won't die. Maximum Overdrive was a critical failure, 1 star from Ebert. Razzie nominations. Stephen King himself called it a terrible film. And yet the Green Goblin truck has achieved immortality. It has forums dedicated to discussing it. Artists create fan art of it. Collectors build replicas. There's even an officially licensed 1/64th scale die-cast model. For a truck that appeared in a badly reviewed film 40 years ago, that's remarkable staying power. Why does it endure? Because it's completely insane. In an era of focus-grouped, committee-designed movie vehicles, the Green Goblin truck stands out as a moment of pure, unfiltered madness. No studio executive today would approve this. You want to put a licensed Marvel character's face on a truck? Yes. That murders people? Yes. In a Stephen King movie? He's directing it himself. Get out of my office. But in 1986, someone said yes. Multiple someones. And the result is so bizarre, so unprecedented that it transcends its terrible movie. It becomes art. Accidental art, maybe. Cocaine-influenced art, definitely. But art nonetheless. The truck appears at horror conventions. Fans take pilgrimages to see it. They share blurry photos like Bigfoot sightings. Look, there it is, the actual Green Goblin truck. It's achieved what every movie prop dreams of. It's become bigger than its film, more famous than its context. A cultural artifact that exists beyond its original purpose. Number 9. The model confusion that drives fans. Crazy remember how nobody can agree on what year the truck is? It gets worse. The debate extends to every aspect of the vehicle's identity. Western Star or white. 4,800 or different model. 1976, 77, or 81. These aren't small discrepancies, these are fundamental questions about what the truck actually is. Internet forums have massive threads dedicated to this mystery. People post comparison photos. Look at the grille pattern here versus here. Check the cab window shape. The marker lights are clearly from this year. It's CSI Truck Edition. The confusion might be intentional, or at least beneficial. Multiple model years mean multiple potential replica builds. Collectors can argue their version is screen accurate because nobody knows what screen accurate actually means. IMCDB, the Internet Movie Cars database, has extensive discussions about it. These are people who identify vehicles for fun. It's their expertise. And even they can't agree. Some say the heavy modifications make identification impossible. Others claim they can tell from specific bolt patterns. The production team probably grabbed whatever truck was available and affordable. Maybe it was already modified. Maybe it was multiple trucks composited into one film vehicle. The 70s and 80s weren't great for production documentation. The truth might be lost forever, which honestly makes it more interesting. The Green Goblin truck isn't just a movie prop. It's a mystery, a puzzle, a debate that will never be resolved, and fans wouldn't have it any other way. Number 8. The Frankie Faison connection. The character who drives the Green Goblin truck is named Handy, played by Frankie Faison. Yes, that Frankie Faison, the one who went on to play Barney in Silence of the Lambs. The commissioner in The Wire, a serious, respected actor. In his first major film role, driving a demon-faced murder truck. Faison's character arrives at the Dixie Boy truck stop, setting up the main location for the film's action. He's not just a random driver, he's part of the narrative structure. The Green Goblin truck isn't just a background vehicle, it's Handy's truck, giving it character connection. Imagine Faison's agent calling, "Great news, you got the part!" Fantastic, what am I playing? A truck driver. Okay, in a Stephen King movie. Better, directed by Stephen King himself. Interesting. Your truck has a giant goblin face that kills people. I'll take it. This was 1986. Faison was building his career. Every role mattered. And here he was, in a Stephen King film, even if King was admittedly not in the best directorial state. Decades later, Faison would become a recognizable character actor. But Maximum Overdrive fans know him as Handy, the man who drove the Green Goblin truck, the man who brought human connection to a mechanical monster. It's probably not the role he's most proud of, but it's definitely the one with the most interesting vehicle. Number 7, the overheating. That almost killed production. We mentioned the cooling problems earlier, but the full story is even worse. The truck didn't just overheat occasionally, it was a constant crisis that nearly shut down filming. North Carolina summers are brutal. Temperatures in the 90s, humidity like a wet blanket. Now, add a massive fiberglass mask blocking your radiator, and action scenes requiring multiple takes. The truck would overheat within minutes, not hours, minutes. They'd start a shot, and someone would yell about temperature warnings. Cut, wait, cool down, try again. Production schedules are tight. Every delay costs money. And here's this truck, the villain of the movie. Refusing to work, it's like hiring an actor who can only perform for 5 minutes at a time. The crew tried everything, extra cooling fans, ice baths for the radiator, shooting at night when it was cooler. Nothing fully solved the problem, they just worked around it. Some scenes were probably shortened because the truck couldn't run long enough. Others might have been cut entirely. We need the truck to chase them for 2 minutes. Best I can do is 30 seconds before it overheats. Then we'll make it work. This is the unglamorous reality of practical effects. It's not just building something that looks cool, it's making it function under brutal conditions. And the Green Goblin truck barely functioned. Every scene you see in the film represents a small victory over physics and thermodynamics. Number 6, the Happy Toys clown. That nobody talks about. Everyone focuses on the Green Goblin mask, but the trailer's clown face is its own nightmare that deserves recognition. This wasn't just a logo. It was a fully painted, detailed clown face leering from the trailer's back doors. While the Goblin attacked from the front, the clown watched from behind. The clown design was deliberately unsettling. Not quite right, the smile too wide, the eyes too knowing. It's the kind of clown that makes children cry and adults uncomfortable. Perfect for a horror movie, the genius is in the subtlety. The Goblin mask is obvious, in your face, literally, but the clown is something you might miss on first viewing. Then you notice it, and suddenly the truck is even worse. 2 faces, 2 nightmares, 1 vehicle. The Happy Toys branding with the clown creates cognitive dissonance. Toys should be fun, clowns should be happy. This is neither. It's King playing with expectations, corrupting innocent imagery. The same technique he'd perfect with Pennywise a few years later. But here, the clown is secondary. Background horror. A detail that adds depth to the nightmare. Not everyone notices it, but once you do, you can't unsee it. The production designers understood that horror works in layers. The obvious monster grabs attention, but the subtle wrongness creates lasting unease. The Green Goblin truck has both. Number 5, the salvage yard, mystery years. Between the film's release in 1986 and Tim Shockey buying the truck in 87, there's a gap. A mystery period where the truck's story gets fuzzy. How did it get from the film set to a Wilmington salvage yard? Who made that decision? Was it abandoned, sold, dumped? These questions matter to preservationists and fans trying to piece together the truck's history. Film productions often abandon vehicles after shooting. It's cheaper than storing or transporting them, but this wasn't just any vehicle, it had a massive custom mask. Licensed, Marvel imagery, you'd think someone would want to preserve it. Maybe they tried. Maybe storage deals fell through. Maybe Stephen King, in his altered state, forgot it existed. The salvage yard period represents the truck's lowest point, from starring in a major studio film to rusting among anonymous wrecks. It's almost poetic, the machine that rose up against humanity, defeated and discarded. During this time, anyone could have bought it, or it could have been crushed. The fact it survived is partly luck, partly the durability of semi-trucks, and partly the mask being too interesting to scrap. Salvage yard workers must have wondered about it. This weird truck with a demon face. Was it from a movie, a parade, someone's fever dream? They had no idea they were walking past cinema history, however bizarre that history might be. Number 4, the die-cast replica validation. When Tough Trucks, Scale Models produced an official 1/64th scale die-cast replica of the Green Goblin truck, complete with Happy Toys trailer. It marked something important. Official merchandise validation. Think about it. Someone looked at the market and decided enough people would buy a tiny version of this obscure horror movie truck to justify production costs. Molds, licensing, manufacturing, distribution, all for a vehicle from a critically panned 40-year-old film. The replica includes incredible detail, the Goblin mask, the Happy Toys branding, the clown face, even the truck's specific modifications. It's not a generic truck with a Goblin sticker, it's an accurate recreation. For collectors, this is huge. Official replicas mean the vehicle has achieved iconic status. It's joined the ranks of the Batmobile, the DeLorean, Tit. Except those are from successful franchises, this is from Maximum Overdrive. The fact it exists at all is testament to the truck's enduring appeal. Collectors display these replicas proudly. They're conversation starters. What's that? The Green Goblin truck from Maximum Overdrive. Never heard of it. Oh, you're in for a treat. The replica also preserves the truck's image for future generations. Long after the real truck deteriorates or disappears, these small versions will remain. Tiny monuments to 80s excess and Stephen King's wild directing adventure. Number 3. The Stephen King drug admission. Stephen King's admission that he was coked out of his mind during Maximum Overdrive's production isn't just gossip, it's crucial context for understanding the Green Goblin truck's existence. This was peak 80s excess. King was battling serious addiction issues. He's been open about not remembering writing certain books from this period. Now imagine him directing a movie in that state. Every weird decision suddenly makes sense. Should we put a goblin mask on the truck? Absolutely. Should the eyes glow? Yes. Should we add a clown to the trailer? Why not make it 2 clowns? The Green Goblin truck is essentially a cocaine-fueled fever dream made real, a physical manifestation of King's altered consciousness. It's too weird for a sober production. Too excessive. Too everything. King got clean in the late 80s. He's been sober for decades now. When asked about Maximum Overdrive, he's refreshingly honest about how bad it is. But that honesty makes the film, and especially the truck, more interesting. It's not a failed attempt at serious horror. It's a document of excess, a warning about drugs disguised as a killer truck movie. The Green Goblin face leering from the screen isn't just a monster. It's a mirror reflecting the chaos of its creation, and somehow that makes it more terrifying than any intentional horror effect. Number 2. The technical marvel. Nobody appreciates. Setting aside the cocaine and craziness, the Green Goblin truck represents impressive technical achievement. Think about what they accomplished. They took a working semi-truck and transformed it into a believable monster while maintaining its ability to function, mostly as a vehicle. The mask wasn't just slapped on. It was engineered to withstand highway speeds, impacts, and stunts. The mounting system had to be robust enough to survive filming while being removable for maintenance. That's not easy. The mask's size and weight distribution had to be calculated. Too heavy, and it affects steering. Too light, and it might tear off during action scenes. The mounting points had to handle tremendous stress without damaging the truck's frame. Then there's the artistic achievement. The mask had to be recognizable as the Green Goblin while being different enough to avoid legal issues. It had to look terrifying at various angles and distances. It had to read on camera in different lighting conditions. The painters and sculptors who created it were solving complex visual problems. How do you make a comic book character's face work on a 3-dimensional truck? How do you maintain the Goblin's essence while adapting it to a completely different medium? These craftspeople probably aren't credited properly, their names lost to history, but their work endures. Every time someone sees that truck, they're seeing hours of problem solving and artistic interpretation. The Green Goblin truck might be ridiculous, but it's also a testament to practical effects artistry, to the crew members who made the impossible possible, even if it did overheat constantly. Number 1. The current status mystery. Where's the Green Goblin truck today? This should be a simple question. It's a massive semi-truck with a giant goblin face, hard to lose. But the current status is surprisingly unclear. Tim Shockey began restoration in 2011. Various sources mention sightings at horror conventions and truck shows, but consistent recent documentation is scarce. It's like Bigfoot for horror movie fans. The truck exists in a state of quantum uncertainty. It's definitely out there, probably restored to some degree, possibly appearing at events. But pinning down exactly where and in what condition, that's trickier. This mystery adds to the truck's legend. Every blurry photo from a convention could be it. Every story about seeing it becomes part of the mythology. I saw it at a show in Ohio. No, it was in North Carolina. I heard it's in a private collection now. The truth is probably mundane. It's likely in storage somewhere, brought out for special occasions. But the mystery is more fun. The idea that this demon-faced truck is out there, somewhere, waiting. Maybe Tim Shockey still has it. Maybe it's changed hands. Maybe it's sitting in another yard, waiting for another rescue. The uncertainty keeps the legend alive. 40 years after Maximum Overdrive, we're still talking about this truck, still searching for it, still fascinated by its existence. And that's the ultimate weird fact. A truck from a terrible movie directed by a self-admitted drug-addled Stephen King has achieved immortality. Not because the movie was good, because the truck was so absolutely, completely, magnificently insane that we can't forget it. And there you have it. 20 facts about the Green Goblin truck that prove truth is stranger than fiction, especially when Stephen King's directing and Marvel's licensing department has lost their minds. Which fact surprised you the most? The overheating nightmare or the fact that this thing has official merchandise? Drop a comment below and let us know. And if you want more deep dives into cinema's strangest vehicles and forgotten movie monsters, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We've got plenty more 80s madness where this came from. Thanks for watching, and remember, next time you see a semi-truck in your rearview mirror, just be glad it doesn't have a goblin face. See you next time. Number 20, the multiple car mystery. So you thought Magnum drove one Ferrari for the entire series? Think again. The show actually used 3 different 308 GTS models throughout its run. We're talking about a 1979 carb model, a fuel-injected GTSI, and later a 1984 Quattro Valvole. That's right, they were swapping cars faster than Magnum could say, "I know what you're thinking." The producers didn't just grab one car and call it a day, they systematically upgraded the vehicles as newer models became available. What's really wild is that most viewers never noticed the switch. The cars look similar enough that unless you were a serious Ferrari enthusiast, you'd never spot the differences. The carbureted model from '79 had a distinctly different sound from the fuel-injected versions. The Quattro Valvole, that was a whole different beast with 4 valves per cylinder instead of 2. But here's where it gets really interesting. They didn't just use one of each model. Oh no, they had multiple copies of each version for different shooting scenarios. We're talking about at least 5 cars of each model year. Some were kept pristine for those gorgeous close-up shots where Magnum's looking contemplative. Others, well, let's just say they took a beating during the action sequences. The stunt cars versus the beauty cars were kept completely separate. The close-up versions were babied like newborns, while the action cars got absolutely hammered week after week. Number 19, the Robin 1 license plate conspiracy. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Every single Ferrari on that show shared the exact same license plate. Robin 1, not Robin 2 for the backup car, not Robin 3 for the stunt double, just Robin 1, all of them. It's like they existed in some weird parallel universe where multiple cars could have the same plate. This wasn't just lazy prop management either. It was a deliberate nod to the mysterious Robin Masters, the wealthy benefactor we never actually saw on screen. Or did we? That's a whole other conspiracy theory. But think about the logistics here. They're driving multiple cars around Oahu, filming in public locations, and somehow nobody at the DMV had a problem with this. The plate became so iconic that replica plates now sell for hundreds of dollars to collectors. What's even stranger is that in one episode, a green 308 GTSI appears with a different plate, Robin 23, supposedly driven by Robin Masters' nephew, so they could make different plates. They just chose not to. The continuity department must have had nightmares about keeping track of which car was where. Imagine the conversation. Quick, we need the Robin 1 car. Which one? The Robin 1-1. They're all Robin 1. It's like some sort of automotive Abbott and Costello routine. Number 18, Ferrari's secret sponsorship deal. You might assume the show bought or rented these Ferraris. Nope. Ferrari North America provided them directly. This wasn't some standard product placement deal either. Ferrari basically became an unofficial sponsor of the show, lending out these incredibly expensive vehicles for free. Why would they do that? Simple. It was the best advertising they never paid for. Think about it, every week millions of Americans tuned in to watch this mustache detective cruise around paradise in a Ferrari. The brand recognition was through the roof. Sales of 308 models in the US reportedly jumped significantly during the show's run. But here's where it gets interesting. Ferrari had strict rules about how the cars could be used, no crashes that would make the car look unsafe, no scenes that would damage the brand's prestige. They were basically Ferrari's babies on loan. The arrangement was so unusual that it set a precedent for future car placements in television. Other manufacturers started looking at Magnum PI as the gold standard for automotive product placement. Ferrari, North America's gamble, paid off massively. The 308 GTS became synonymous with 80s cool. Even today, mention a red Ferrari from the 80s and most people immediately think of Magnum. That's marketing you literally can't buy. Number 17, the post-show Ferrari Shuffle. What happened to these Ferraris after filming? They didn't end up in some Hollywood car graveyard. Ferrari North America took them back, and here's where it gets really interesting. They repainted them, they serviced them, and then They sold them as used cars, that's right. Some unsuspecting buyer in the mid-80s might have purchased a Ferrari that Tom Selleck had been driving just months earlier. No special plaque, no certificate of authenticity, just a regular used Ferrari sale. Can you imagine discovering years later that your car was actually used in Magnum PI? The company would completely refurbish these vehicles, removing any trace of their television past, new paint jobs to cover any wear from filming, fresh interiors to replace anything damaged during production. They essentially gave these cars new identities. It's like a Ferrari witness protection program. Some of these cars have since been identified and authenticated, but who knows how many former Magnum Ferraris are sitting in garages around the world, their owners completely unaware of their vehicles' television heritage. The thought is kind of mind-blowing. You could be driving Thomas Magnum's actual car and never know it, unless, of course, you start growing a suspicious mustache and developing an urge to wear Hawaiian shirts. Then, you might want to check your car's history. Number 16. The Auction House Surprise. In recent years, one of the authenticated Magnum Ferraris went up for auction. The 1984-85 season car, a 308 GTS QV, not even a rare supercar by Ferrari standards. Just a regular production 308, it sold for $181,500. Let that sink in. A car that originally sold for around $60,000 in the 80s fetched nearly $200,000, and this wasn't because it was mechanically special. It wasn't faster than other 308s. It didn't have some secret turbo upgrade. The only thing special about it was that Tom Selleck sat in it while cameras rolled. The auction house had certificates proving this specific car was used in filming. They had documentation from Ferrari. They even had photos from the set showing this exact vehicle. The bidding was intense. Collectors from around the world wanted a piece of television history. The final buyer? They remained anonymous, but rumors suggest it was someone who grew up watching the show. The sale price set a record for non-special edition 308 models. It proved that television provenance could literally triple a car's value. Other Magnum Ferraris that have surfaced since have commanded similar premiums. It's created a whole subcategory in the collector car market, screen-used vehicles. And Magnum's Ferrari sits at the top of that pyramid. Number 15. The Tom Selleck size problem. Tom Selleck is 6 feet 4 inches tall. The Ferrari 308 GTS, it was designed for average-sized Italian men. You see the problem, the production crew had to get creative. Really creative. First solution, remove all the padding from the driver's seat, just rip it out. Tom was basically sitting on a thin piece of leather over metal frame. Comfortable? Absolutely not. But it gave him the extra headroom he desperately needed. Even with the seat modification, getting in and out of the car was a production in itself. They had to choreograph his entrances and exits carefully. No quick jumps into the driver's seat like you'd see in other cop shows. Tom had to fold himself into that car like origami. The steering wheel position was another nightmare. In some shots, you can actually see Tom hunched forward in an unnatural position just to reach the pedals while still being able to see over the wheel. His knees were often jammed up against the dashboard. For 8 seasons, the man suffered for his art. Behind the scenes, photos show Tom stretching constantly between takes. His back must have been screaming. But on camera, he made it look effortless. That's acting, folks. Making the physically impossible look cool since 1980. Number 14. The Targa Top Solution. Because of Selleck's height issue, the show developed a signature look almost by accident. The 308 GTS is a Targa, meaning it has a removable roof panel. Guess what was removed for almost every driving scene? That's right, the roof. This wasn't just for aesthetics, it was pure necessity. With the roof on, Tom's head was practically pressed against it. Any bump in the road, and he'd get a concussion. So off came the top. This created that iconic windblown look that became synonymous with the show. Tom's hair fluttering in the Hawaiian breeze, the sun glinting off his aviator sunglasses. It was perfect for the paradise setting. But here's what viewers didn't see: the logistics nightmare this created. Hawaii has sudden rain showers, a lot of them. The crew had to constantly monitor weather conditions. They kept the roof panel nearby at all times, ready to slap it back on at a moment's notice. The removable panel itself could be stored behind the seats in a vinyl cover. But during filming, it usually stayed with the crew in a support vehicle. They actually had multiple roof panels for each car, just in case one got damaged. Because without that option to remove the roof, Tom Selleck literally couldn't drive the car. The Targa configuration saved the show. Number 13. The mid-engine reality check. Here's something that might surprise you. The 308 wasn't your typical TV detective car. While other shows had their heroes driving front-engine muscle cars or sedans, Magnum was wrestling with a mid-engine, rear-wheel drive Italian exotic. The engine sits behind the driver, not under the hood. This completely changes how the car handles. Weight distribution is totally different from what most American drivers were used to. The car wants to rotate around its center, not plow forward like a traditional front-engine vehicle. For the stunt drivers, this was both a blessing and a curse. The balanced weight meant the car could corner like it was on rails, but it also meant that when things went wrong, they went wrong fast. Oversteer could snap around quickly, recovery required a delicate touch. Tom Selleck had to learn to drive this configuration for the show. He wasn't just sitting there while stunt doubles did all the work. Many of the casual driving scenes were actually him behind the wheel. The mid-engine layout also meant the front trunk, or frunk, was tiny. Props department had to get creative about where Magnum could store anything. That's why you rarely saw him putting anything in the car. There was literally nowhere to put it. The engine noise right behind your head was intense too. Dialogue recording during driving scenes was nearly impossible. Most conversations had to be dubbed in later. Number 12. The Quattro Valvole Power Play. When the show upgraded to the 1984 Quattro Valvole model, they weren't just getting a newer car. The QV was a different animal entirely. Quattro Valvole means 4 valves in Italian. 4 valves per cylinder instead of the previous 2. This was cutting-edge technology for the early 80s. The extra valves meant better breathing for the engine. More air in, more exhaust out, more power overall. But here's the kicker. Even with this upgrade, the QV only made about 236 horsepower. By today's standards, that's what you get in a decent sedan. Not exactly supercar territory, but in 1984, that was serious performance. The QV could hit 60 miles per hour in under 7 seconds. Top speed was around 156 miles per hour, though good luck hitting that on Hawaiian roads. The engine note changed too. The QV had a distinctly different exhaust tone from the earlier cars. More aggressive, more metallic. Audio engineers on the show had to adjust their recording techniques for the new sound. Ferrari was particularly proud of this advancement. They made sure the show's producers knew they were getting the latest technology. It was like a rolling advertisement for Ferrari's engineering prowess. The QV became the definitive Magnum Ferrari for many fans. Those last few seasons cemented the upgraded car in popular memory. Number 11. The fuel injection evolution. The progression from carburetor to fuel injection across the different Ferraris tells its own story. The original 79 model used traditional carburetors, old school, mechanical, temperamental in humid Hawaiian weather. Starting that carbureted Ferrari in the morning wasn't always guaranteed. The crew had to keep the cars meticulously maintained. One filming delay because a Ferrari wouldn't start could cost thousands of dollars. Then came the GTSI with Bosch fuel injection. Suddenly, the car started reliably, every time. The fuel injection system was more efficient too. Better gas mileage meant less time refueling during long shooting days, but it wasn't all improvements. The fuel-injected cars had a different throttle response, less immediate. Some stunt drivers actually preferred the carbureted cars for action scenes. They liked the direct mechanical connection. The sound changed dramatically too. Carbureted engines have that distinctive gurgle and pop. Fuel injection smoothed everything out. More refined, but some argued less characterful. For continuity, they had to be careful not to use different variants in the same scene. An eagle-eyed viewer might notice the engine sound changing between cuts, the evolution of technology playing out in real time on network television. Most viewers had no idea they were watching automotive history unfold week by week. Number 10. The power steering absence. Here's something that would shock modern drivers. None of the Magnum Ferraris had power steering. Zero, zilch, nada. Every turn of that wheel required actual muscle. At low speeds, parking that Ferrari was a genuine workout. The steering wheel became heavy as a barbell. Tom Selleck's arms must have been burning after a day of filming. Watch the parking scenes carefully. You can sometimes see the effort required to turn the wheels when the car's barely moving. It's not acting. That's genuine physical exertion. Highway speeds were different. Once moving, the steering lightened up considerably, but any scene requiring tight maneuvering, that was a test of strength and endurance. The lack of power steering actually helped with performance driving though. The feedback through the wheel was incredible. Drivers could feel exactly what the tires were doing. Every pebble, every change in road surface. For the stunt drivers, this was invaluable. They could push the car to its limits because they knew exactly where those limits were. No power assistance meant no artificial numbness, but for a TV show requiring multiple takes of the same parking scene, it was exhausting. They actually had to schedule breaks for the drivers. their arms needed recovery time. Modern Ferraris all have power steering now. Progress? Maybe. But something was definitely lost in translation. Number 9. The top speed reality. The show loved to make it seem like Magnum was flying around the island at incredible speeds. The reality? Those 308s topped out around 156 miles per hour. And that was under perfect conditions. In the real world of Hawaiian filming, they rarely broke 80. First, Hawaiian roads weren't exactly designed for high-speed pursuits. Narrow, winding, often wet from sudden rain showers. Pushing a mid-engine Ferrari to its limits would have been genuinely dangerous. Second, the film crew couldn't keep up. Camera cars had their own speed limitations. Going too fast meant losing the shot. Most chase scenes were filmed at much lower speeds than they appeared. The magic of editing made 40 miles per hour look like 90. Clever camera angles, sound effects, quick cuts, all creating an illusion of speed. The insurance requirements were strict too. Exceeding certain speeds would void the production's coverage. One accident at high speed could shut down filming for weeks. When they did need genuine speed shots, they used professional drivers on closed courses. Often early in the morning when roads were empty, these scenes were planned meticulously, every turn mapped, every potential hazard identified. The 156 miles per hour top speed was mostly theoretical for the show, but it sounded impressive in promotional materials, and that's what mattered for the Ferrari mystique. Number 8, the fleet management nightmare. Managing at least 5 versions of each model year meant the show had a minimum of 15 Ferraris in rotation at various times. 15. Let that sink in. Each car needed its own maintenance schedule, its own insurance, its own storage. The logistics were insane. They had spreadsheets tracking which car was where, which one needed service, which was scheduled for filming. It was like running a small Ferrari dealership. The cars designated for close-ups were treated like museum pieces, climate-controlled storage, weekly detailing, regular mechanical checks even if they hadn't been driven. Any imperfection could ruin a shot. The stunt cars lived a harder life. After action scenes, they'd need bodywork, suspension adjustments, sometimes complete mechanical overhauls. The production had a dedicated Ferrari mechanic on call. 2 cars were always kept in ready-to-film condition. If one broke down, they needed an immediate replacement. No waiting for parts from Italy, no delays for specialized service. The spare parts inventory alone was worth a fortune. Extra wheels, body panels, engine components, all kept on hand just in case. Some cars were cannibalized for parts to keep others running. A harsh fate for a Ferrari, but the show must go on. By the series' end, tracking which parts were on which car was nearly impossible. Number 7. The certification authentication. Years after the show ended, Ferrari started certifying which cars were actually used in filming. This wasn't simple. Serial numbers had been recorded, but not always accurately. Some documentation was lost, memories faded. They had to cross-reference production records with Ferrari's delivery logs, match up dates when specific cars were in Hawaii, compare wear patterns with film scenes. It was automotive archaeology. The certification process became incredibly valuable. A certified Magnum Ferrari was worth significantly more than an identical model without the paperwork. Suddenly everyone claimed their red 308 was from the show. Ferrari had to develop strict authentication protocols. They examined everything, paint layers showing multiple resprays, unique modifications made for filming, wear patterns consistent with TV production use, even DNA evidence in some cases. Tom Selleck's hair found in a seat crevice. Some cars couldn't be definitively authenticated. They had the right characteristics but lacked paper trail. These exist in a gray zone, probably from the show but not provably so. Their values reflect this uncertainty. The authentication process continues today. As new documentation surfaces, more cars get verified. It's like finding lost treasure. Each authenticated car adds to the show's automotive legacy. Number 6. The designer heritage. Every 308 GTS wore bodywork penned by Pininfarina, the legendary Italian design house. This wasn't just any car designer. Pininfarina shaped automotive dreams, Ferrari's longtime partner in creating rolling sculptures. The 308's design was actually quite radical for its time. Clean lines, pop-up headlights, that distinctive flying buttress C-pillar. It looked fast standing still. But what viewers didn't know was the engineering underneath. The car used a tubular steel frame, not the modern monocoque construction. This made it lighter, but also more flexible. You could actually see the body flex slightly over bumps. The GTS designation meant Gran Turismo Spider, technically making it a convertible even though it just had the removable Targa top. This classification mattered for import regulations and insurance categories. Pininfarina's design aged beautifully. While other 80s cars look dated now, the 308 still turns heads. Those clean lines translated perfectly to television. The car looked good from every angle. Critical for a show that made the car a co-star. The design influenced Ferrari's future models too. Elements from the 308 appeared in later cars, the Magnum effect spreading through Ferrari's lineup. Pininfarina probably never imagined their design would become a television icon, but that's exactly what happened. Art meeting pop culture at 236 horsepower. Number 5. The Targa. Top storage system. That removable roof panel wasn't just yanked off and tossed aside. Ferrari engineered a specific storage system for it. The panel could be stowed behind the seats in a custom vinyl cover. Sounds simple, it wasn't. The panel was large and awkward, made of painted metal and glass. One wrong move and you'd crack the rear window or scratch the paint. The storage procedure was specific: release the front latches, then the rear, lift carefully to avoid hitting the windshield frame, rotate exactly 90 degrees, slide into the storage bag. The vinyl cover had to be positioned perfectly. Too loose and the panel would rattle. Too tight and you'd stress the material. The crew developed their own quick removal technique for filming. They could have that top off in under 30 seconds, but proper storage took several minutes. During filming, they rarely used the behind-seat storage. The panel usually went straight to a support vehicle. This kept the car's interior clear for shooting and prevented damage from repeated storage cycles. The storage bag itself became a valuable accessory. Original bags in good condition now sell for hundreds of dollars to collectors. A vinyl bag for hundreds of dollars. That's the Magnum effect. Some cars on the show had multiple storage bags, backups for the backups, because one torn bag could delay filming if they needed to properly stow the top. Number 4. The Green 308 Mystery. In a few episodes, a Green 308 GTSI makes appearances. Not red, green, with a different license plate, Robin 23. This car was supposedly driven by Robin Masters' nephew. But why green? The explanation was never really given. Some theorize it was simply another Ferrari that was available for filming. Others think it was a deliberate choice to show the Masters family had multiple Ferraris. The color was unusual for Ferrari at the time. Red was traditional, yellow was sporty, but green, that was a special order color. This car's appearances were rare, enough that many fans don't even remember it, but it's there. Canon proof that Magnum's Ferrari wasn't the only one in the Masters fleet. The green car created continuity questions. If there were multiple Ferraris available, why did Magnum always drive the red one? Was it his designated car? Did he just prefer red? These questions were never answered. The green Ferrari disappeared from the show without explanation, like it never existed. But photographs from production prove it was there. Another mystery in the Magnum automotive universe. Today, that green specification would be incredibly rare. A 308 in that color would command a premium just for being unusual. Add the Magnum connection and you've got a collector's dream. Number 3. The horsepower misconception. 236 horsepower from the Quattro Valvoline. That's it. Today you can get that from a Honda Accord, but people watched Magnum and assumed he was driving some 1,000 horsepower monster. The show did nothing to correct this assumption. The way they filmed it, the sound design, the reaction shots, everything suggested massive power. In reality, the 308 was quick but not blazing fast. 0 to 60 in about 6.8 seconds. Respectable for 1984, laughable by today's supercar standards. But here's the thing, it didn't matter. The Ferrari mystique transcended actual numbers. It was about presence, about exclusivity, about that prancing horse badge. The show understood this. They never mentioned horsepower figures, never talked about performance statistics. They let the car's image do the talking. Smart move. Viewers filled in the blanks with their imagination. In their minds, Magnum's Ferrari was the fastest thing on 4 wheels. Reality would have been disappointing. This perception helped Ferrari immensely. People assumed all Ferraris were incredibly powerful. The 308 became an entry point into the brand. A gateway Ferrari that seemed more impressive than it actually was. The Magnum effect turning modest specifications into legendary status. Number 2. The collector market impact. The Magnum PI effect fundamentally changed the collector car market for 308s. Before the show, these were just used Ferraris. Nice cars, sure, but not particularly special in Ferrari's hierarchy. After Magnum, everything changed. Suddenly, every 308 owner claimed their car might have been on the show. Red ones especially saw value increases. Even cars that never went near Hawaii benefited from the association. The GTS model became more desirable than the GTB Berlinetta Coupe version, simply because Magnum drove a GTS. This was unprecedented. A TV show single-handedly altering an entire model's market dynamics. Dealers started advertising cars as Magnum spec if they were red with tan interior. Didn't matter if they were built years after the show ended, the association was marketing gold. Restoration. Shops reported a surge in requests to convert cars to GTS specification. Owners of coupes wanted Targa tops. The modification wasn't cheap or easy, but people paid for the Magnum look. The show created a template that's still followed today. Red paint, tan leather, black soft top. It's the definitive 308 color combination. Now, thanks entirely to a television production's arbitrary choice. Even Ferrari acknowledged the impact. They've referenced the Magnum connection in their own marketing. The show became part of the company's official heritage. Number 1, the legacy that won't die. Here we are, decades after Magnum PI ended, and that Ferrari is still iconic. More people recognize the 308 GTS than almost any other Ferrari model, not the F40, not the Enzo, the 308. Because of a TV show. The car has appeared in countless other productions since, always as a reference to 80s cool, always with someone making a Magnum joke. It's inescapable. The association is permanent. Ferrari has made faster cars, more beautiful cars, more exclusive cars, but none with the cultural impact of the 308 GTS. It democratized the Ferrari dream, made it seem attainable. That's powerful. Tom Selleck can't escape it either. Decades later, people still ask him about the Ferrari. He's done Shakespeare, won Emmys, starred in multiple successful series, but he'll always be the guy who drove that red Ferrari. The show's reboot tried using a different Ferrari, a 488 Spider. Beautiful car, incredible performance, nobody cared. It wasn't the 308, it didn't have the magic, that's how powerful the original combination was. The 308 GTS is now a guaranteed classic, values keep climbing, not because of performance or rarity, because of 8 seasons of television that captured imagination. Every car show features them. Every Ferrari gathering includes several. They're rolling reminders of when one TV show and one car created magic. The weird thing, most of these facts were never supposed to be public. The multiple cars, the modifications, the authentication drama. It was all behind the scenes necessity. But these secrets make the story even better. They show how much work went into creating that effortless cool. And there you have it, 20 weird facts about Magnum's Ferrari that prove truth really is stranger than fiction. From Tom Selleck literally not fitting in the car, to Ferrari secretly taking back and reselling the cars after filming, the story of that red 308 GTS is way more complex than anyone imagined. Did any of these facts surprise you? Drop a comment below and let us know which one blew your mind the most. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive into 80s television automotive history, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We've got plenty more classic TV secrets where these came from. Until next time, keep your Hawaiian shirt pressed and your Ferrari dreams alive.